Karnataka, rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district.
State after state is talking about how they're not going to be able to start their vaccine for all program from 1st of May. Here is the Gujarat Chief Minister saying that they are likely to get 2 crore Covishield doses from Serum and 50 lakh doses of Covaxin. Now, one would assume that while he's saying they're going to get it, it probably just means that's what they've ordered. He's also gone ahead to say that we expect to get the stock in the next 15 days. On 29th of April, he is expecting the stock to come in 15 days. This just reiterates what we've been telling you all this while, that none of the states are going to be able to really open up vaccination to 18 years and above because they don't have the stocks and they won't be getting it from the manufacturers before mid-May or even 3rd week of May. The Gujarat Chief Minister, though, appealing to people all above the age of 18 to come out and get the vaccine, of course, when they have the vaccine and they open the vaccination centers. Thanks for staying with us here on Mirror Now. We're going to continue getting you updates, all COVID-related developments as the country battles the worst catastrophe we've really seen in our lifetime. And we thought with the first wave, things were better. We had a handle on them when everything simply went out of control and exploded. And right now, today, from Maharashtra to Delhi to West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, no state is in a better condition. It's getting worse. Some have already announced lockdowns. Others are in the curfew restriction mode. But the cases continue to rise. What is worse at this point is that even the vaccination drive has slowed down. And it doesn't look like for the next 2-3 weeks anything is going to change on that front. As cases continue to surge, we are actually seeing crucial days being lost as far as the vaccination drive is concerned. This is the latest comment which is also coming from the Kerala Health Minister saying it is the duty of the centre to supply vaccines. We are placing the order, but the vaccine companies are saying they will supply the vaccine only May end or early June. This 1-month delay will be dangerous. We need vaccines urgently to save lives, says the Kerala Health Minister. In a few minutes from now, we will bring you the exit poll results state by state. We will start off with what West Bengal numbers are projected to be, but we'll also talk about the other states. And very quickly, I want to ask this question before we go ahead. Mr. Javed Ansari, was there, to your mind, a thought process within our political parties in the establishment that, you know what, by summer we'll have our vaccines, we seem to have a handle on the cases, we'll bring it under control whichever way it is required to be. So let's just carry on with the elections. Let's cash in on what we think seems to be a wave in our favor.
Look, even if the other political parties thought otherwise, they could have made a difference, because the ability, I mean, they are not the ones taking the decisions. They are not the ones who can decide whether elections can be held at a particular time or not. It's the government, it's the election commission and the government in tandem that decide. They consult each other and then decide that elections have to be held. So if there is a body that is accountable, if there are people who are accountable, it's the election commission and the central government for taking this decision, for going ahead, for actually turning a blind eye to the ground realities. And it's not as if they were not aware. I mean, you said in your program, and we've heard this so many times earlier, the scientific community, people who know better, were cautioning the government that, look, the worst is yet to come. They don't get carried away, don't believe that this is over, because this is not. Just as Mr. V.K. Paul, Dr. V.K. Paul has now told the government that this pandemic is going to peak, this wave is going to peak in mid-May, and the numbers can go up to 5 lakhs, with UP and Maharashtra being the being the worst sufferers. Similarly, they had pointed us to this direction, but somehow in this urge to expand their political footprint, to extend their sphere of influence, people who could have taken decisions did not. They prioritized winning elections over the lives of the people. That's the plain truth. I don't know if there is a more kinder way of putting it, but that is the main thing.
You know, and before I go to the numbers, and the numbers are ready and I'm looking at them, but I'll just keep holding on to them for just a few more seconds. And I wanted to ask Mr. Nilanjan one question. Mr. Nilanjan, you know, does it happen that within a couple of months the sentiment changes? I mean, what would have happened if the governments and the parties had decided and insisted on pushing the elections? Those believing that the sentiment is in their favor, would they have lost out on it? Does the sentiment change so quickly on ground?
You know, I have a slightly nuanced difference with the emphasis on elections, whether it should be held or should have been pushed back. My problem is not with elections per se. My problem is with the elections and the way they were held. Could they not have been held in a different way? I am sure that it could have been held in a different way. The problem is that the political template was set, at least as far as West Bengal is concerned, several weeks before the Election Commission even announced the election. Let me take you back to the time when the BJP wanted to take out Padyatras, Rath Yatras across the length and breadth of West Bengal at a time when the pandemic, they believed that they had already won over the pandemic, but it now shows, you know, that there were indications right from the beginning that cases were rising and that this was not, the virus was not in our past yet. The second issue is that which has been flagged in this program. Vinay had said about all party meetings. Tell me, since the last year when lockdown was announced, from that time when there has been any clear bipartisan effort from the side of the government, you would not find any. The third point which Javed had mentioned, which also needs to be talked about now, is the entire issue of the Kumbh Mela being held in Haridwar. Should it have been held at all in this stage? Are there not instances when, let me explain to you. The Kumbh Mela was technically due in 2022, but it was advanced to 2021 because of some astrological mumbo jumbo, which honestly speaking, I have not been able to understand, not that I am a student of astrology. But nonetheless, there have been past instances when Kumbh Melas have been pushed back. There have been occasions when the government has not cooperated with the holding of the Kumbh Mela. Most importantly, in 1942, again in Haridwar, that the government at that time did not run trains to Haridwar because they said that there could be a fear of the Japanese coming and bombing here. Mind you, that was in the middle of the Second World War. This is also a virtual biological war against an unknown enemy.
Right.
In this particular case, special trains were run to Haridwar. So coming back to it, that we have to look at the entire process. Possibly, once again, the Election Commission needs to be careful and mindful that they must hold the elections in time, but they must also consult the political parties to understand as to how to do it within the COVID norms. Unfortunately, this was not done. It has only abdicated its responsibility of being able to showcase its neutrality. Mm-hmm. The 8 phases in West Bengal, we all know it was for the benefit of which political party.
Oh, all right, so there are two, schools of thought here. One, and I don't think any one of us are saying necessarily that we are against the elections, but the fact that could they have been held in that practical scenario that, we are talking about where all the rules had to be followed. I don't think our netas would have done that either which ways. Even if the Election Commission had penalized a few of them, wouldn't have made any difference. But let's get on with some of the numbers, and there's constant updates coming on COVID as well. But first up, let me bring you the numbers, the projections for C voters. And before we do that, let us tell you what the methodology was. It's important to know this, especially because these are COVID times. So even for our pollsters, it's extremely tricky and challenging to get out there and get the pulse and then make these projections. The interviews were conducted amongst adults aged 18 plus. The sample spread was across all assembly segments with a margin error of about 3%, plus and minus 3%. The C voter used a proprietary algorithm to calculate the vote share. These are the details of the methodology, and of course the sampling was done across various dates from March 27 to April 29. The sample size actually varies from 5,003 to 85,000 plus. So, amidst a pandemic, we held an election, and what did the people have to say? Aarti is standing by with the first set of numbers coming in for West Bengal. What is the C voter projecting, Aarti?
Well, Tanvi, this is a number that everybody's been waiting for. Yes, there is, of course, is a pandemic, but there's also a little bit of excitement about the West Bengal numbers. Is it going to be Khela Hobe, Khela Sesh, and for whom? Well, the numbers tell you that the BJP has crossed the 100 mark, but not enough. They obviously had to do a little more, but as per the C voter projections, the TMC is going to get about 150 to 164, which means they're crossing the halfway mark. Definitely not close to what they would have wanted to, but as per the C voter projections, they are set to cross the halfway mark and form government. I should add as a rider, these are the initial projections. The BJP, I mean, to be fair to them, from 3 seats in 2016 to go up to 109 to 121, these are the C voter projections, is a huge jump, but just not enough. I think they fell short in that final little push. That final little push was absent as per, of course, these initial projections from C voter. The left plus, which comprised the left, the ISF and the Congress, biggest loss for them. 14 to 25 seats have been projected. It was a complicated and it was a difficult alliance, so to speak, in many ways, and you can see from the numbers that didn't really work out. And others, 4 seats in 2016 and 0 projected now. But these are the C voter initial projections for West Bengal. Basis this, the big takeaways are the TMC is likely to be retaining power. The BJP has crossed the 100 mark, but just not enough. They had huge ambitions. They said that they were going to cross 200 seats, falling short of that. The left Congress and the ISF alliance, which was supposed to be the X factor, something that could be a spoiler, not quite creating the impact that they would have liked. But basis these numbers, the TMC set to retain power, but crossing the 100 mark, which, remember, the three mark figure was supposed to be the big hurdle. Somebody like a Prashant Kishore had even said if they reach 300, if they cross the 3-figure mark, then he will retire from politics. I don't know if that's going to happen, but basis these numbers, BJP is still falling short of crossing the halfway mark.
Well, this is one set of polls. Of course, Aarti will also be bringing us many more, Vinay, because, we like to give the complete picture to our viewers, and we will be collating several other projections and then see if there is a key common headline coming out of that. As far as the C voter is concerned, C voter seems to suggest that Mamata Banerjee will come back, but significant gains for the BJP, even vote share rise from 10% in 2016 to about 39% projected this time.
Yes, I mean, look, let's put it this way. There is no question that the BJP's vote share would have risen. I don't think that comes as a surprise for anybody. But I also do believe that if these numbers were to turn out like this on May the 2nd, the BJP would be disappointed, simply because they paid a very high-stake battle. It's basically a winner-takes-all battle that they were playing. This was a prestige fight, and the kind of resources and the manpower that they put in trying to win Bengal and to defeat Mamata was unprecedented, and especially more unprecedented because these were very dangerous times. I mean, virtually the entire cabinet, the Prime Minister himself, Mr. Amit Shah, Mr. Nadu, they campaigned like never before. So clearly, if this is what happens on the May of 2nd, then it is going to be disappointing for them. I think, you may well try and see the glass half full from that party's point of view and say, oh, they've made a lot of gain from 3 to 100. But I think that was expected. Uh, uh, a lot of people possibly would have imagined that this would have been a lot closer. Some people even went to the extent of saying maybe BJP would probably pip Mamta. But remember, this is an exit poll, and I am again putting a caveat here that exit polls, especially in a pandemic, is a difficult thing to do. So let's wait, of course, for other polls to come out as well, and that will probably give us a better sense of what the trend and the pattern in the West Bengal elections is.
Yes. So let me bring in our other panelists as well. And Mr. Nilanjan, I want to start off with you. It was an intense battle, extremely intense. Were you able to sense, a change in sentiment when we went from phase to phase? I mean, your reaction to the sea voter projections that we are looking at?
I think, the projections seem to be as was expected, that the Trinamool Congress is able to form the government, but with a reduced majority. We really do not know whether it is going to be in the figure range that what sea voter is predicting, or is it going to be slightly different. But it definitely says, that the Trinamool is coming back to power. We had kind of said that. The basic question of whether the BJP is going to cross the 100 mark or not, the question of Prashant Kishore saying that he is going to, stop doing what he has been doing for the past several years, is a matter of, we have to actually see. He already has a job lined up in Punjab, so is he going to send in his resignation on the 2nd of May, the moment BJP's tally crosses 100? We all have to see, but in any case, politics is full of famous words being taken back or being completely eaten up. But, suppose sea voters' figures are the final figures. It is going to be a very fragile government. It is going to be a fragile government. It will leave more than a crack open for the BJP to try to push it constantly for the next 5 years. So in any case, I think, regardless of whether the BJP wins this elections electorally or not, politically they have, because the entire political discourse throughout the campaign period has been set has been played within the framework set by the BJP. That's what we have to accept. We have to understand that what led Mamta Banerjee to chant the Chandi part when she launched her campaign in Nandigram. If we are able to answer that, we will get who is the political victor. Electoral victor, 2nd of May.
Electoral victor, 2nd of May. We're also going to bring more and more projections. But Mr. Javed Ansari, do you agree that this will perhaps also, even if the TMC comes back, it won't be as strong as it is? Or many would say that because she took on the BJP and she took them on at their game and she actually fought it on their turf, and if she emerges victorious, then it only makes her stronger.
Look, to my mind, the TMC and Mamta Banerjee have managed to dodge a bullet. Now much will depend if these numbers, and like Vinay, I am also a very cautious person when it comes to numbers and predicting elections. So if, assuming that these numbers are true, this would mean that Mamta will not have a free run. The BJP will be a very disruptive opposition. They're going to make life pretty difficult for her. Much will also depend on the sagacity and wisdom of Mamta Banerjee, on how she conducts herself politically in power. Because look, the BJP is now a force to reckon with in Bengal. And there are many who believe that they are just one election away from capturing Bengal. They've already set the agenda. They've forced all the other political parties to act within the framework of the agenda that they've set. On your program, I had pointed out that Mamta Banerjee, the day the elections were held, she organized a yagna. And she made sure that the visuals of that were made available to the media, and it was telecast. So everybody is now very conscious of not doing anything which can be seen as offensive or which would in any way offend the Hindu sentiment. So BJP in that way has scored a political point. Mamta Banerjee and TMC live to fight another day. How they conduct themselves now, it will have to be a qualitatively very different government from the previous two. For one, she'll have to streamline. They cannot, she'll have to keep her nephew in check. She'll have to keep all the other cronies in check and ensure that not only does she run a very corrupt-free government. She's also very mindful of the fact that she's not seen as appeasing one section over the other, because the BJP has ensured that no matter that even the slightest deviation, and they will play that a particular card, which has proved to be their strong selling point across the country and also to a very large extent in Bengal.
Well, okay, I want to take it to the third set of parties, the left and the Congress, and essentially also talk about the left. Mr. T. S. Sudhir, contrary to what has been largely the sentiment of what may happen in Kerala, where the left may end up coming back, here it seems it's been completely now out of the game. How do you view the fact that left is now being reduced along with Congress and ISF to just about 14 to 25 seats?
Absolutely. In fact, most of the strength of the left in the previous assembly has gone over to the BJP, at least if these figures actually hold on the 2nd of May. And that is not going to be any consolation or good news for the left parties. Basically, it has become a party which is absolutely irrelevant now as far as West Bengal politics is concerned. And as far as the Congress is concerned, it will really need to get back to the drawing board and see what it can really do as far as Bengal politics is concerned. And the ISF, if these figures hold, would possibly come a cropper. Their entire Muslim vote, which it was really hoping to take away a bit of it from the Trinamool Congress, may not really have succeeded. Remember the fact that OWC did not contest too many seats. So this time they do not even have the OWC excuse to give as far as any kind of result is concerned. But the other point about Mamata Banerjee, there is a lot of talk about if Mamata Banerjee manages to return to power in Bengal, she would be the most acceptable face for the post of Prime Minister as far as the opposition is concerned. But therein would lie a big risk. If these figures hold and she comes back to power with a much reduced majority, she would not really be able to leave Kolkata and Bengal and move over to national politics, move over to Delhi politics, because that would be playing with fire. So it's going to be a very difficult decision for Mamata Banerjee should she decide to move over to national politics with a much reduced majority as far as the Bengal Assembly is concerned.
In fact, reduced majority for Mamata Banerjee, but many believe, Mr. Deshratang Nigam, that they still believe that the BJP will get back. Are you in agreement with the projections we are looking at, or do you think something is amiss here?
Because, you rightly pointed out during pandemic, and especially in West Bengal, people were scared to tell the real preferences even in the exit polls. So there could be some kind of a catch out here, and people were not freely telling as to whom they have voted for, so far as exit polls are concerned. And I believe the numbers will be reversed. What projections which are being showed and what the ground reports that I am getting is that you interchange TMC and BJP, and that is the kind of result I am hoping, and that is what the ground reports are.
Okay, that is one way of looking at it, and fair enough. We don't know in COVID pandemic times how these polls, to the extent of how accurate they may be, and the atmosphere of fear. Mr. Ansari, I see your hand, and I'll come to you in just a bit. But Vinay, to you first, because we've also, heard from many reporting from on ground I've heard from reporters who say, well, contrary to earlier, people are saying we are now feeling lesser fear and we may be able to vote accordingly, but maybe they're not speaking out who they voted for.
Yeah, look, I mean, Mr. Nigam agrees that there may be fear, but I think what neither of us know is who are they most scared of. I don't know whether they're scared of one party or the other. But yes, the bottom line is that there is always a chance that some of the findings of the exit poll may not exactly turn up the way it's being projected. That's why I believe that once we have a larger pool of the polls that are being done today, we'll probably have a better idea. But having said that, there was no question there is going to be a tight contest. I think everybody agrees there is going to be a very tight contest. And remember, in tight contests, even a 1% or sometimes even less than 1% vote share gap can be very decisive. And they're frankly nightmare to project. So it's a bit tough. My bigger concern, Tanvi, which is this, that irrespective of this, whether Mr. Nigam's view that it may be reverse of this, or whether C voters' assessment that it will be TMC, my biggest problem is that the next government that is going to come to power is going to be a as both Nilanjan and Javed said, a fractious government, and this government has to deal with a very serious COVID problem. You cannot have political fights and opposition and the ruling party bitterly fighting and horse trading and doing various other things, or trying to save its MLAs in the middle of what possibly is the biggest challenge in front of the next government, whoever it is.
Well, we know that in the first wave, when it was during Mamata Banerjee's government's time, information and data specifically was kind of eclipsed. We had to deal with and look into whatever data, little bit of data was coming through from West Bengal. This time around also the situation is no better in terms of what the true ground situation is. But it is pretty bad. So whichever is the next government has its task cut out for the next couple of months. Mr. Ansari, you wanted to make a point. Go ahead, please.
Well, the point that I meant to make, and from sitting here, is that one significant outcome, and if these numbers are correct, is the spectacular decline of the left.
Yes.
It's just 10 years ago, they were the ruling party in Bengal. And now they've been reduced to 14 or at best 25. I mean, they'll be struggling to get into double digits if these numbers are correct. So, I mean, as a political scientist, as somebody who watches and who studies these things, it may be worth studying as to, such a rapid and spectacular decline. Why has this come about? And all of a sudden, it used to be said that, after Cuba, the second place, the other place where communism was alive and kicking was West Bengal. And today, they are on the periphery. They are fighting a battle for survival in Bengal. Why has this come about? This is something for left and for everybody else to think and ponder about. This spectacular decline, what does it owe itself to?
Absolutely. Honestly, I don't know. Every time we have these conversations, there was much exuberance, but that perhaps something that the spokesperson had to show on our debates, Vinay. But this party has not been able to get its act back together as far as Bengal is concerned.
Look, I mean, insofar as the left is concerned, Javed is right. I think probably the only explanation is that TMC has positioned itself as the real left in some ways. I mean, 2011 onwards, they've been positioning themselves as the left. And in that sense, that space has just gone to them. Even in the cadre has gone to them.
The cadre and the cut mafia. All of it.
And the cut mafia. Yeah. So in the culturally, like, I mean, I know personally, a lot of family members who stay in Bengal. I can tell you that when the left was in power, the same people still come and collect money. I mean, then they were collecting on behalf of left, and now they're coming and collecting on behalf of another party. So that hasn't changed at all. I mean, that's exactly the same which was there earlier. So in that sense, that is possibly one explanation. I think in terms of the Congress, they probably knew that they have very little stake. In fact, if you notice the way the campaigns was done, Rahul Gandhi probably didn't even go there, because they realized that this is a state where they have really no stake, and there is a bigger prestige battle on in Kerala, which is now the home state of Rahul Gandhi, which is where they need to make a mark, because if they end up doing badly there, it's going to really create bigger problems for them.
Congress clearly knew what their priorities were. They didn't even send Rahul Gandhi to West Bengal, and at some point he also made a virtue out of it, saying, I'm suspending all my rallies in Bengal because of the state of affairs. He never went there to campaign because obviously they knew it's not going to get anything for them at all. So they picked and chose their battles. Their battle was Kerala, and we'll very shortly find out what the projections have to show, whether it worked or not, or Mr. Pinarayi Vijayan is going to return and create a history of a kind in the state of Kerala. We're going to take a very short break. I request everybody to stay on. On the other side, numbers being lined up for Bengal's neighbor, the state of Assam. Stay with me.
In association
of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first.
Information that impacts us all is news to me. Are you planning the farmers? Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area. Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet. Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka. The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu. The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going, where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told. A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTA response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees. I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to me. Are you planning the farmers? Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area. Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet. Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka. The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu. The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going, where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told. A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTA response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees. I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to me. Are you planning the farmers? Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area. Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet. Reporting from the remotest of areas.
Numbers are beginning to come in. These are the projections. These are exit polls. They have a error margin, and of course, in pandemic times, even for the pollsters, it's difficult to reach out and get to the people and get their view in. But let's tell you what the sea voter Bengal projections look like. TMC set to get about 152 to 164. BJP projected to win 109 to 121. The left plus, which is the left, and the Congress and the ISF projected to get about 14 to 25. That's essentially what the sea voter is projecting. So essentially, as far as this is concerned, it does look like Mamata Banerjee is coming back, though on a slightly weaker foot. It does project a big gain, a massive gain for the BJP, but not a number that they would be too happy with. They had bigger ambitions, and to be restricted to this may not keep them very happy. From Bengal, we go across to Assam, and let's look at some of the initial projections that are coming in for Assam as well right now. On your screens, we're going to fire the plate for Assam as well, where the competition is largely between the NDA and the UPA, the many allies along with BJP, and many allies along with the Congress party. These are the seat share numbers that you're actually looking at right now. NDA projected to get 75 to 85, and UPA projected to get 40 to 50. So it's relatively closer, but the NDA is getting past the halfway mark even here. This is one set of projections we've got. Let's also get you the seat share number on this as well. And that will also give you a better sense as well for vote share numbers. 48% is what we're looking at projected for NDA, and 40% projected for UPA, about 12% projected for the others. So this is the next set of numbers that we've got here right now, Vinay. Assam, while even the earlier opinion polls did keep a little close, but it was always in favor of the NDA despite all this anti-CA sentiment that we see.
Yes, there's only one word that I disagree with. If this is what is going to happen, and second, it's not a close fight at all. Actually, BJP is doing very well there, considering the so-called sentiment that people were talking about. Because here, if the range goes up till 80, And that's a very good performance, because clearly a lot of people believed that this was UPA's best chance in some ways to actually upstage the BJP. But that doesn't seem to be happening as far as the sea-water poll is concerned. So what it tells you is this, that the entire anti-CA narrative or the NRC controversy that was there hasn't worked for the opposition. The BJP has been able to withstand that, concern that a lot of people had raised, and have done marginally better than what they, because if you see the midpoint of the range is higher than what they got last time. I mean, they had 74 seats, and if the current projection says between 75 and 85, the midpoint will be around 80. And I don't think that, the UPA will be particularly pleased to see that despite all the sentiment that they were talking about, they've not been able to breach what they were able to do last time.
Is this a reflection, Mr. Javed Ansari, of what BJP has managed to do in one term, or is it also a reflection of the fact that despite a very strong sentiment, people didn't know where to take it, that the opposition and their leadership wasn't inspiring enough for them to move back to the Congress side?
Look, for one, the Congress and its allies did not consciously, and for whatever reason, they were unable to project a leader as their chief ministerial candidate. They didn't have a chief ministerial face. Two, this election increasingly became very polarized between those who want BJP and those who don't want BJP. It became a minority versus majority thing. And in a situation like this, it's not surprising. Conventional wisdom has it that in a situation like this, it's always the majority that wins. The Congress, by virtue of its alliance with the AUDF and other smaller parties, was hoping, and as we speak, somebody just WhatsApped me, a Congress leader. Obviously, a lot of people are watching our program and our election forecast, because somebody just WhatsApped saying this is going to be entirely the opposite. We'll get 80 plus. Now, anyway, this is their assessment. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. We will go by what the sea voter is projecting, because we are the ones who have commissioned them.
Yes.
Having said that, the Congress's best bet lay with trying to get a majority of the minority community votes and about 20 to 25% of the majority community votes. Evidently, they failed to do that, and that's why we have the numbers that we have. They were hoping that along with the other splinter groups, the smaller parties, they'll be able to draw in enough votes from the majority community, whereas the Congress and the AUDF would ensure that they get the maximum amount of minority votes. But in this polarization that has happened, evidently the Congress and its allies,
you're very right in that sense, and
succeeded.
Mr. Ansari, that the Congress definitely seems to believe, and more than them, their allies seem to believe that they're going to perhaps get it, or it's going to be extremely close. And I say that because I remember after the elections, Vinay, they actually moved some of the candidates all the way to Rajasthan. They, I don't know if they were preempting poaching even before the results came in, but that did happen. And they did take some of their ally candidates all the way to Rajasthan and put them up in one hotel. I just want to point out that while this is the India Today Access My India projection for Assam, the sea water projection for Assam is yet to come. We've also, I'm looking at what the Republic CNX projection also is, and because we're putting all of them out there and we're leaving it for the voters and viewers to decide which one they want to really go with. Republic CNX projection gives 74 to 84 seats to NDA and 40 to 50 to Congress. So they're actually giving more to the NDA than what Access My India is projecting. But that's Republic CNX. Just want to emphasize on that. Mr. Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, do you think that these numbers reflect the true story? And if so, why? Why was it that despite such a strong anti-CA and NRC sentiment, the vote may not go against the BJP?
At least for today, we'll have to presume that these numbers are correct. So if this is correct, then we'll have to look at as to why, despite a lot of talk that the UPA had been able to get the social coalition in its favor and not the NDA, we have to understand as to if it happened despite a good social coalition, why did it not go with the UP and instead the voters went and opted for the NDA? I think the answer would lie in the fact that this is an election, where the identity was not on the social lines, which has been there. Mind you, Assam has been in the middle of an ethnic, issue for several decades. Right in the inception years of the Assam movement, the RSS, Mr. Balasaheb Devras to be very precise, he was a Sarsang Chalak at that point. He is the one who actually said that there is need to demarcate or rather differentiate between the refugee and the infiltrator. He was the first one to actually postulate that if Hindus who feel aggrieved or victimized in Bangladesh, if they do not come to India, where else would they go? And they have to actually be welcomed here, whereas the Muslims who are coming in here, whatever be the reasons, be it economic hardships or others, have to be pushed back because they are not people of this land. So this entire debate has been of, the struggle for the BJP, to put it that way, was how to convince the voter that it is the party of the majority community. If these elections are true, then it would mean that the BJP, at least for the people of Assam, have been able to communicate that your social identity on the lines of caste or ethnic groups is not more important. You have to look at your pan-Hindu identity, and on that basis you have to choose the BJP and its allies.
Okay, fair enough. Interesting point that you've made there. Just highlighting what we're looking at, the India Today Axis, My India number projections for Assam, NDA 75 to 85, UPA 40 to 50. The Republic CNX number gives a higher number of seats, projects higher number of seats for the NDA. I'm also looking at, today's Chanakya Assam projections, which is now saying and projecting 70 and above for BJP and 56 plus minus 9 for the Congress party. So between the 2 and 3 different polls, Mr. Deshwaratan Nigam, the commonality seems to be that NDA is ahead and set to return in Assam.
Yes, Tanvi, in fact, all the 3 polls predict that BJP is coming back to power in Assam. And in fact, the vote swing is also quite marginal, about more than 6%. And secondly, the reason being that anti-CA protest did not work, and the polarization in the Muslim community did take place, but they were concentrated in few pockets. They were not spread out in entire Assam. Therefore, they affected few seats, and there was a counter, consolidation because of the Congress plus AIUDF coming. So Congress lost there. Otherwise, they had a very good chance. If they had not, shaken hands with the AIUDF, probably they could have done better. So in my opinion, I think there should not be any controversy with regard to Assam, because all the 3 opinion polls that you have shown are pointing in one direction only.
Absolutely, and that direction seems to be going in favor of, the NDA as far as the policies are concerned. Mr. Sudhir, what is your sense? How do you read it? Do you agree with, what Mr. Ansari is saying about why this seems to have worked for the BJP and its allies?
Well, I am actually quite perplexed at the Congress' larger strategy, because if you look at previous state elections in, say, Karnataka or in Gujarat before that, they actually followed what we called a soft Hindutva line. We had Rahul Gandhi visiting temples both in Gujarat and in Tamil Nadu because they wanted to blunt the BJP strategy, the Hindutva strategy of the BJP effectively. But if you go to an Assam, it's a completely 180-degree turn out there, because there, by going in an alliance with Badruddin Ajmal, you are essentially targeting the minority vote and saying that, okay, I will take the large chunk of the minority vote, thereby perhaps losing, if these exit polls are to hold, losing a large part of the majority vote. Now, as a strategy, is that good enough for the Congress if it is not coming to power either in a Gujarat or a Karnataka or now perhaps even in Assam? So in that sense, the larger national strategy, political strategy, electoral strategy of the Congress really confuses me.
Vinay?
Yeah, I mean, I've been perplexed by Congress's political strategy for a while now. I mean, I can't get what exactly is their game plan. So they mentioned about Assam, they've done pretty much the same even in West Bengal to some extent. They are fighting the left in one state and they are partnering them in another. So there are many areas where it is confusing, and I think the voter probably now sees it like that as well. I mean, people are not that stupid either. So the problem is that, and I was very, interested in what Mr. Deshratan Nigam said. I mean, he said that if they hadn't tied up with AIDF, they may have actually done better. Now that's even, if that is the case, then it is even more intriguing why they did that. I think part of the reason is that the Congress is badly missing Mr. Tarun Gogoi's presence there. I think he was one of the most wiliest and the sharpest political leaders that they had in the state, and his absence, of course, has affected them very badly. And I'm very sure that if this particular environment had existed in Assam, or the narrative, if Mr. Tarun Gogoi was around, the Congress would have done way better. His son is there, but I don't think he still has the same political acumen and sharpness that Tarun Gogoi had. So clearly that's one aspect that they're missing. Also, I think on the other side, it is very apparent that if the BJP ends up doing very well, this will be Himanta Biswa Sarma's election, because he pretty much rode roughshod over Sarbanand Sonowal and got all his tickets, and it was entirely his distribution. And in fact,
he will be the next chief minister?
That's personally my sense, that if that is the case, because look, there were a lot of candidates that were not exactly the chief minister's favorites, who he was able to push through. And if this is what the result comes in, then he's the guy. And pretty much I think he's always had an eye on that chair, and that's pretty much what he'll end up getting.
Okay. So let me quickly actually get in a word from Mr. Javed Ansari as well on this. Mr. Ansari, do you believe that if the BJP comes back to power, which as most polls are now projecting for Assam, Sarbanand Sonowal is out and Himanta Biswa Sarma will be the next chief minister?
Well, I won't be surprised, because Mr. Himanta Biswa Sarma has been breathing down Mr. Sonowal's neck for a very long time. His is the bigger imprint as far as Assam is concerned. He's the BJP's points person for the entire Northeast. I happen to know Mr. Sonowal very well. He's by nature a very low-key, understated person, and perhaps in today's rough and tumble of politics, Himanta Biswa Sarma, who can play by the book and outside, is better suited than Mr. Sonowal. So I won't be surprised, although those who know BJP, maybe Nilanjan might be able to throw better light on this, but just by what I hear from talking to people, I won't be surprised if Himanta Biswa Sarma does become the BJP's face this time.
Okay, I'm going to take a very short break. I request all of you to stay on. We're going to try and get some more numbers in just a bit. Quick break. We'll be back and also talk a little bit more about what's projected for Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Stay with me.
Across Karnataka, the rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu. The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going, where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told. A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees. I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to me. Are you planning the farmers? Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area. Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet. Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka. The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu. The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going, where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told. A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees. I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information Information that impacts us all is news to be.
Are you planning the farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTA response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be.
Are you planning the farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTA response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be.
Are you planning the farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTA response to
Welcome back. We're now getting in some projections for the state of Kerala, and this is an extremely interesting one. As far as Kerala is concerned, Republic CNX is projecting that LDF will get 72 to 80 seats and UDF behind that with 58 to 64 seats. NDA 125, that's the projection as far as Republic CNX is concerned. I'm also going to read out, and we'll have it on the screens in just a bit, India Today Access My India projections, which are much, much higher for LDF. It is projecting 104 to 120 for the LDF, and for UDF 20 to 36. That's a very large, vast difference that actually they're showing. NDA 0 to 2 and perhaps others 0 to 2. That's the projection of Access My India, India Today on your screens right now. Showing LDF 104 to 120. So what we've been hearing on ground all this while is also being reflected in these poll projections, Sudhir, which is the fact that Mr. Pinarayi Vijayan and his party are going to be creating history, being voted for second straight time here.
Well, Kerala is a very interesting story, given the fact that if these figures are to go by, this is going to be a vote on performance, and that's pretty much we found even on the ground during the election campaign period, because Pinarayi Vijayan in a sense has reinvented himself. Go back 5 years, in 2016 it was V.S. Achyutanandan who was still the most popular face as far as Kerala political landscape of the left was concerned. Pinarayi Vijayan was seen as the party man who controlled the party, whereas V.S. Achyutanandan was the more of a people's man. But in the last 5 years, Pinarayi Vijayan has kind of established himself as an administrator. People may call him someone like, you know, the kind of Modi who wears a veshti, in the sense that he is pretty much cut of the same cloth. Pretty authoritarian in the manner in which he runs the government and also controls the CPM. But given the fact that his 5 years have seen a large number of natural disasters, the Nipah virus outbreak, the cyclone to floods, but he has managed to kind of deliver the goods, and that impression is what perhaps may be carrying the day as far as the LDF is concerned. Given the fact that the state has a history of rotating the government every 5 years, the UDF will have reason to be disappointed, more so given the fact that in 2019 Lok Sabha elections, they swept Kerala, including the Wayanad seat of Rahul Gandhi. So Rahul Gandhi campaigned aggressively for the Congress and the UDF in Kerala, but if these numbers are anything to go by, that may not really have borne fruit in that sense.
So it does look like a case, Vinay, where, you know, with the floods, with the pandemic, the vote for performance, at least in Kerala, has gone back. And Kerala saw, you know, really bad couple of years, year after year, with the monsoons and the floods and the landslides. And then came the pandemic and hit them. But every time they've come back, you know, and have managed to handle the healthcare system.
Yes, and I think it's a very interesting case study. I really believe that Kerala as a state is a very interesting case study for multiple reasons. First, just to make a political point, I'm very surprised by the poll that India Today has conducted. That figure doesn't seem accurate to me at all. I don't think the gap can be that huge that the left will get 120 seats. I mean, for that to happen, you will probably need half of the Muslim League to walk over, and, you know, every Christian to have been voting for the left, which I don't think is possibly going to happen. But it's very obvious that the left front is probably ahead in the game, and they will probably return to palm. Now, why it is a case study is this. Historically, that state has always changed governments, but now with Mr. Vijayan, there is almost a personality cult. In fact, Mr. Vijayan is doing a lot of things that possibly, and Sudhir is the better expert for that. I'm giving only, you know, basis what I keep hearing and reading and observing and all the friends that we have there, that he seems to have adopted a personality style which is actually very different. I mean, he's been accused of being a little arrogant. He's been riding roughshod over dissent. Some of the journalists there are finding it difficult to operate, which are not the things that you saw with Kerala earlier. But at the same time, he's also been credited with having handled, say, the flood aftermath extremely well. And also, of course, the pandemic, because they've had several rounds of it, and they've got hit very badly. But you don't see the kind of outcry in Kerala as you see possibly in some of the other states which have been hit equally. So maybe his very tough dictatorial personality cult kind of style, which is not exactly how left used to work earlier, has kind of reinvented the way politics in Kerala is. And I personally believe it's a very interesting experiment which one should study on what's really changed in Kerala.
Well, you know, I can only imagine the rivals and the haters of Congress and Rahul Gandhi are going to make it about how he shifted there and, you know, picked Wayanad as the constituency. And look what happened. They broke the record and created history by not coming back to power. I'm completely out of time, Mr. Ansari. My apologies, but we'll pick up this conversation again, of course, with some of our experts and politicians at 9 o'clock. These are some of the initial numbers that we've got for you, where projections show that Mamata Banerjee is set to return. That's the sea voter projection for West Bengal. We've looked at 3 different set of numbers as far as the state of Assam is concerned, and all 3 of them put NDA in the lead, set to return back to power in Assam. We're looking at numbers from Kerala, 2 different set of projections. While their projections are very different, you know, there's a gap is huge, but they both seem to suggest that Pinarayi Vijayan and the left party will return to power in Kerala.
अधिकतर प्लाईवुड से
Mirror now tells that they have so far disbursed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be.
Are you planning to farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded areas.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going, where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTA response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be.
Are you planning the farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded areas.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
Rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTA response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
Exit poll numbers are out. According to Times Now See Voter exit poll, TMC set to serve another term in Bengal. DMK projected to come in power in Tamil Nadu. My India Access exit polls project victory for NDA in Assam. Maharashtra extends lockdown by 15 more days. Restrictions to continue as they stand till mid-May. After Serum Institute, now Bharat Biotech slashes the vaccine rates for the state governments. Bharat Biotech says it will now be selling Covaxin at 400 rupees instead of earlier 600 rupees to the state government per dose. Bombay High Court wraps. Maharashtra government says crumbling infrastructure is a collective failure of the state. This as the state reels under extreme bed crunch with zero bed availability in cities like Pune and Nagpur. Delhi High Court asks Centre to solve the oxygen crisis. Court observes panic due to lack of resources. Court mentions even it is receiving requests for beds. Centre response is no need to panic. As COVID surge continues, stories of apathy and misery expose government failures. In Uttar Pradesh, people seen begging and crying for medical aid. In Andhra Pradesh, patient dies as hospital refuses admission without cash. And in Bihar, a man dies in the hospital washroom unnoticed by the staff. After Gujarat, Bihar and Madhya Pradesh, alleged misreporting of COVID deaths now emerge in Delhi and Karnataka. North Delhi mayor accuses our government of hiding data. In Bengaluru, a mismatch of 760 deaths now reported. Good evening to the 8 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Tonight, we continue with our relentless focus on the COVID catastrophe, because it is a catastrophe. Tonight, we talk about what is the true picture when it comes to COVID fatalities, lives being lost to this coronavirus, while the state governments, one after the other, face the heat of our courts and public alike over total COVID mismanagement. Here is another concerning trend. More and more cities, more and more states are allegedly misreporting on COVID-related deaths. In the past 2 weeks, reports of data mismatch has actually emerged from 5 states, including Gujarat, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and now we look at Delhi and Karnataka. Let me tell you what's happening in Delhi. And by the way, in the national capital, this mismatch, this fight between the MCD run by the BJP and the state numbers took place even in the first wave. After much outrage and debate, there was some amount of data correction that did take place there to give us a correct picture. Right now, it's the civic body again in the national capital that is taking on the AAP government over data mismatch. The MCD claims 1,500 deaths are missing from the Delhi government's record. I don't understand, viewers, why any government, any city authority thinks they can get away. They may try to block information, but I don't understand how they believe this kind of truth will remain hidden. For example, in Karnataka, there is a discrepancy of 760 deaths within the Bengaluru civic body's own records. Between different departments, BPMP records of different data shows a discrepancy. The civic body is giving us one number, the crematorium is giving us another number, and the discrepancy is over 700 deaths. In Patna, there is a mismatch between the data that the state government gives us and what the crematoriums are telling us. The government says 23 people have died in Patna on 23rd April. Crematorium data suggests 60 people were cremated there. Bhopal. And Bhopal is something we've reported on consistently, just like many cities in Gujarat. Inconsistencies in the data between April 21 and April 24th again continues, where we're seeing 100 cremations take place on one single day. The government says 10 people died of COVID. 94 cremations on another day, government says 3 people died due to COVID. In Gujarat, the things are so bad and the contrast is so huge that even the High Court refuses to believe what is being shown by the state. Vadodara, Rajkot, Surat, the hospital data shows a massive mismatch story. Now, there are two things here that I want to talk about. Firstly, let's make it clear. If the governments believe by denying the reality of crematoriums or by trolling us and slamming us for showing the so-called negative stories and pictures of cremation grounds and burial grounds, if they believe by trying to pressurize us, they can hide the reality, that's not going to work. You can put barriers as high. We will get to the sky and get the visuals to our viewers. And we only do this to show the reality. We do this to show the mismatch in the data. Now, one argument which can be taken sometimes is that the governments now increasingly are only recording the deaths due to COVID in hospitals. So if somebody's died outside the hospital waiting for their turn, or somebody's died at home, those are not getting factored in the government records, even though the crematoriums are recording that data. This means there are far more people in our country today dying because of coronavirus, and we are in denial of that reality. Here is another point. I am not saying that the COVID strain now has gotten more dangerous, that it's gone more deadly or fatal. But could it be that because of the large number of cases and the burden on our healthcare infrastructure, we are not able to save as many lives? That if we had the space and the beds and the staff and the oxygen and the testing facilities and the drugs, many of these lives could have been saved. Are we looking at a higher death count because our healthcare infrastructure has crumbled? Let's get real and let's talk facts. I say good evening to Sudhir Mishra, resident editor of Navbharat Times, Reema Nagarajan, editor for research with Times of India, Amulya Nidhi, national co-convener for Jan Swasthya Abhiyan, Dr. Anand Bhan, researcher for global health, bioethics and health policy, Dr. Giridhar Babu, professor and head for life course epidemiology at the Indian Institute of Public Health. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us. I want to start off with Mr. Sudhir Mishra. Mr. Mishra, you and I have had a lot of these conversations about the data mismatch. I can tell stories that I know personally linked to our families where even after the patient has died in the hospital, the family has been given a COVID negative certificate for the cremation ground. Those are the kind of attempts that are being made, Mr. Mishra, to suppress these numbers. Would you agree?
देखिए ये बात तो बिल्कुल साफ है। हम लोग भी रोज डेटा देख रहे हैं, जो गवर्नमेंट का डेटा आ रहा है और जो बाकी यहाँ के जो शमशान गृह हैं उनका हम डेटा लेते हैं। खासतौर से अभी अगर हम बात करें तो हमने सिर्फ दो जो यहाँ के बड़े हिंदू शमशान गृह हैं, जो एक इसको गुलाला घाट बोलते हैं और एक दूसरा वैकुंठ धाम है, तो उन दोनों के डेटा कल का अगर हम बात करें तो कल का करीब था 250 के करीब था, परसों भी ऐसा ही था। और इसके अलावा भी 3-4 यहाँ पे और शमशान गृह हैं, उसमें कुछ कब्रिस्तान हैं, कुछ क्रिश्चियन के कब्रिस्तान है, कुछ मुस्लिम कब्रिस्तान है, 2-3 हिंदुओं के और हैं। तो काफी ज्यादा संख्या होती है और वो संख्या जो अभी मृत्यु की संख्या आती है सरकारी आंकड़ों में, वो सबसे ज्यादा मेरे ख्याल से 40 के करीब आई, वरना 20, 18 ऐसे ही 10, मतलब इस तरह की संख्या आती है। तो आप इससे अंदाजा लगा सकते हैं कि और जब महामारी होती है तो जितनी भी मृत्यु होती है वो ज्यादातर उसके पीछे रीजन कोविड होता है। अब इस बार का जो कोविड वायरस है उसकी भी एक अजीब कहानी है कि कई बार वो RT-PCR में भी नहीं पकड़ में आ रहा है, तो और वो रिपोर्ट निगेटिव होती है और जब हम CT कराते हैं या चेस्ट का एक्सरे कराते हैं तब क्लियर होता है कि वो तो नुकसान पहुंचा रहा है शरीर को और कोविड ही है। अब पहले तो उनको एडमिट भी नहीं किया जा रहा था, लेकिन अब उनको एडमिट करना शुरू किया है। तो ये बहुत गंभीर बात है और मुझे एक बात पता नहीं क्यों समझ में नहीं आती, किससे छुपा रहे हैं हम अपने आंकड़े। क्योंकि डेटा जो होता है वो अगर आपको चीजों का सही ढंग से आकलन करना है, सही स्ट्रेटेजी बनानी है, फ्यूचर के सही प्लान बनाने हैं, तो हमारा आंकड़ा सही होना चाहिए। अगर हम सही आंकड़ों के ऊपर आगे चलेंगे तो वो हमारे लिए बेहतर ही होगा, क्योंकि हमारी तैयारियां उस तरह से होंगी। नहीं तो फिर क्या होगा, अब अगर हम गलत आंकड़ों के ऊपर ही सारा अपना वो रखेंगे या हम राज्यों की एक प्रतिद्वंदिता होगी कि हमने बहुत अच्छे से मैनेज कर लिया कोविड को, या कोई दूसरा राज्य कहे, महाराष्ट्र कहे या राजस्थान कहे या मध्य प्रदेश कहे या उत्तर प्रदेश कहे कि हमारी तो संख्या इतनी ही रही। लेकिन हकीकत तो लोगों को मालूम होती है ना। अब जो लोग सफर कर रहे हैं, जिनके घर का एक आदमी मर रहा है, जिनके प्रियजनों के प्राण जा रहे हैं, वो तो कभी नहीं भूलेंगे ना इस चीज को कि क्या हो रहा था। और उनके घर वाले की जो मृत्यु है वो आंकड़ों में आई भी, दर्ज हुई कि नहीं हुई। कि मैं किसी जिले का, गोरखपुर का या कहीं का देख रहा था कि कोई एक राजनीतिक दल का व्यक्ति कह रहा था कि मेरी वाइफ की डेथ हुई है और जिले के आंकड़े में तो कहीं कोविड का डेथ नहीं। तो ये बहुत दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है, मतलब स्ट्रेटेजी के लिहाज से, रणनीति तैयार करने के लिहाज से। और मुझे नहीं समझ में आता है कि इसको छुपा के किस तरह का, मान लीजिए अगर ये लगता है कि इसका कुछ राजनीतिक फायदा भी मिलेगा, तो मुझे नहीं लगता कि इसका कोई राजनीतिक फायदा इन बातों का मिलना है।
शायद से जब तक इलेक्शन करवाने हैं, चाहे वो पंचायत पोल्स हो या किसी और प्रदेश में सिविक बॉडी पोल्स हो या असेंबली पोल्स हो, ये फायदेमंद रहता है कि आप सच्चाई को ना सुने। और उसके लिए हम किस हद तक जा रहे हैं उत्तर प्रदेश में, ये तो बहुत क्लियर हो गया। The attempts, the kind of stories and examples that are emerging right from denial of testing, the denial of even conducting an RT-PCR test, to denial of a COVID positive death certificate, to denial of what the cremation numbers suggest versus your own hospital data. I mean, that's the extent. And I'm not just talking about Uttar Pradesh. I'm looking at Bengaluru in Karnataka, where crematoriums are saying 155 people died. The civic body BBMP says 92 people have died. Crematoriums said on April 20th, 154 people died. Civic body said 70 people died. 147 on April 21st as per crematoriums, less than half as per the BBMP portal. That is what the mismatch shows. And my concern is, Rema, that when we try and push this narrative repeatedly that all is well, it gives a false sense of assurance, not just to people but also authorities, who then don't plan, who don't increase oxygen cylinders, who don't increase ventilators, who don't increase life-saving infrastructure because they believe it's not that fatal. So, Rema Nagarajan, is your own analysis also showing this, that this is not a one city or a two city story, but a larger trend and a worrying trend that we're looking at across the country? Okay, I'm not too sure if she is able to hear us. Let me just bring in our other panelists as well on this conversation. Another one state that has openly and brazenly done this, Mr. Bhan, is the state of Madhya Pradesh. Now, you know, even if we are to say, okay, they are just looking at state data and not the crematorium data or people who are dying outside on the streets or inside their homes, fact of the matter is this information will be required for us to prepare ourselves.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tanvi. You know, any good public health system relies on sound data. In the absence of sound data, launching a good response obviously will become difficult. By underreporting either data on the true number of cases or on deaths, I don't think it serves any useful purpose besides perhaps political purposes or you know, or to show that the problem is not as bad as it is appearing. But everyone is seeing the truth, right? We're seeing visuals. Everyone has heard stories. Almost every family in every circle is impacted, and they know the kind of increase we are seeing in real life in terms of the number of cases as well as deaths. So given this, I think it serves no purpose not collect data. Perhaps there are problems with the system. It's not like we had a perfect system pre-pandemic and suddenly we are now not able to collect data in the same way. You know, there have been concerns around adequate collection of data and certification of death, true certification of death, even before the pandemic. But all the more reason at this point of time for us to have a good handle on what the case count is and what the deaths are, especially so with deaths. You know, when you lose someone to a disease, then, you know, the family deserves closure. They also need acknowledgement that the government registers that as a COVID-related death, and it is leading to some kind of a policy response. If that is not happening, I think it certainly will cause continue to cause distress for that family, and is also again, you know, not reflecting very well on any policymaker or state.
How much of it, Dr. Giridhar Babu, how much of it, the data, the death count that we're looking at, is also because we're not able to provide the healthcare facilities on time? You know, and I want to talk about this because we're not trying to say that necessarily the virus or the strain itself has become more deadly. It's just that we're not able to perhaps handle the number of serious cases we are getting anymore.
Yeah, Tanvi, thanks for having me on the show. Let us put the number of deaths in perspective. There are nearly 8 to 9 million deaths per annum in this country, which means each day there are deaths between 20 to 25,000 throughout the country, which means in a district you will have between 30 to 35 deaths every day. If these won't be noticeable by general population, mainly because people do not find who these 30 people are. But if we are obviously finding deaths happening in our neighborhood, in our communities, in our graveyards, much more than this load, then there is a perceptible difference in the general number of deaths and the excess number of deaths. And if this is real, then how much is it counted by the COVID-19 system, data capturing system? How much is outside it? You took the example of Bangalore. In Bangalore, there is system from the ICMR registry which goes to the hospital, and the BBMP, which is the Bangalore Corporation, captures it. The crematorium data goes on to a different Excel sheet and then gets reconciled maybe once in a month or once in 15 days. These data capturing mechanisms need to have standard operating procedures. Not necessarily every time people conceal the data by purpose, but because there is no system to record these excess deaths into the overall database. Finally, what is more important, which we have not done till now, is We need to do verbal autopsy of all the deaths to understand what is the cause of death. Once the total deaths are known in the community and you know the cause of death, then you can categorize. There are long-term problems in terms of medical certification of death and death registration and all that. But those need to be fixed in the long run. But currently, we need to get our act right in terms of counting the death. My own belief is that if we do not count somebody's death in our data, that is disrespecting their entire life. We should not be doing that, not necessarily by purpose or by design or by default. We should now at least build mechanisms to understand how to count the death properly. There has to be a serious effort at the state and national level.
I understand what you're saying, that obviously there will be, deaths in a city that take place on a daily basis. But the conversations we've had with those at cremation ground, the gap which is there between the state records and what is happening at crematoriums, the fact that you're now running out of wood, the fact you're running out of space, you're creating more space for burial grounds and crematoriums, that your furnace iron is melting because it's been overused. This goes on to show what the official statistics don't show us. The official statistics, and I want to tell this to our viewers, on a daily basis are also registering a high number now, in absolute terms, not in a percentage terms. But a 7-day average of daily deaths for our country has been 2,877. 2,800 people in the last 1 week have died on an everyday basis. Think about that, which is officially recorded. Add to it the fact that most cities that we've looked at are actually showing us just half the reality. So this data could be double. Then add to it that we are not even capturing what's going on in our rural India, in smaller towns and villages. So this data could go beyond that. And then you get the real picture of just how many lives, Reema Nagarajan, we are losing to COVID, whether it is for lack of healthcare infrastructure, for lack of timely treatment, or just the fact that we've now become so overwhelmed about it.
Are you asking me, Tanvi?
Yes.
Well, I mean, there is no doubt that all the records are not, deaths are not being recorded. Now, we can have a debate on whether that's deliberate or whether that's a systemic problem. Definitely looking at the scale of how many deaths are being missed, and also reading the signals that are coming from the state, it definitely looks like there is an effort to actually record fewer deaths. So that means there is an effort by states to show fewer deaths than actually are happening. So it can't be merely a systemic issue. Having said that, I mean, you also raised the issue about whether it's because of COVID or because of a new variant, or is it because of the health system? I can tell you from Delhi that it is definitely a system that is a problem. A lot of lives are being lost, not just because of COVID, but definitely due to lack of health care. We are losing a lot of young people who would have had a good chance of survival, but they're reaching too late. They don't get oxygen. Even when you have admitted them into the hospitals are so overloaded that even when they get that rare ICU bed, the care that they are getting is not ICU level care. The doctors know it. The doctors are saying that they are helpless, because where they might have been treating 50, they are treating 100 or more. And we haven't seen the scaling up of healthcare workers or the healthcare staff according to the number of patients who are coming in. And if we don't do that, we are bound to see a lot more deaths. And that won't be just because of COVID. It will be definitely because of lack of healthcare, the lack of systemic preparations.
Yes, absolutely. And, that's the larger point that I want to make here. We've done way too many debates about saying that, okay, there seems to be a concerted effort to suppress the numbers. Now, you want to suppress the numbers because you don't want the world to know how badly you've mismanaged that. You want to suppress the numbers because you don't want to be counted as one of the states that's in a mess right now. It can be for whole different, various reasons. But apart from that, the larger repercussions of how we are unprepared, and if it gets worse from here on, we will be dealing with a bigger fatality count. That's the point I want to make here. And Mr. Amulyanidhi, you know, the third aspect that I was saying, we are still only capturing or at least verifying data, death counts for the big cities. We don't even know what's going on in many of the smaller towns and rural India where there is not even primary health care.
See, if you very openly see what's happening this year and last year. Last year, we know that we are not prepared. Okay, last year preparation was delayed. Last year everything was new. The team was new in the state level, national level, and everything. So everybody tried to cooperate, and there was more analysis was going on. Last year also there were deaths happening, but this year we have almost a year to prepare. We know what is going to be happening. We know what are the referral system. Last year, the analysis in the states, PPTs and presentation was telling delay in treatment, delay in identification. Then again, there was manipulation in the number of COVID cases, manipulation in number of samples. This was happening in Madhya Pradesh and other parts of the country. Now this year, we know everything. We know what is the referral system. We know why deaths happened last year. We have tried to analyze some of the deaths. Audit has been taken place. But this year, what is happening? There is no universal data. The data from the urban and rural pockets, the entire focus is urban 8 to 10 centers. What is happening to rural areas? What is happening to district headquarters? There are deaths which has been reported as typhoid. There are deaths which has been reported as malaria. Along with there are typhoid cases, there are COVID cases. There is no data. The sampling is not happening. Then actually, you know, the referral system, the oxygen is exposed now. But what is the referral system? Where is the ambulances? Because it is totally dependent, the rural pockets in the country is dependent upon the referral system like ambulance and other stuff. Every district headquarters, all the patient which goes from rural areas or tribal areas to district headquarters, usually they refer to high centers like in Madhya Pradesh, you say Indore, Bhopal, Jabalpur, Gwalior. Then you can see have Delhi and other places like Surat, Ahmedabad and all these places. So these places, we don't have oxygen facilities. We don't have proper ambulance facilities. We don't have ICU beds. So what will happen? This data will coming and they are dying on the way. And there is no death reported. Because if you are not reaching to the hospital, this has been not. So this year, it is not mismatch. It is manipulation of the death data, suppressing of the death data. And this is forceful, purposeful. You see the New York Times report of Madhya Pradesh in Bhopal. In mid-April, 13 days, there was 41 deaths as per the government report. But as per the New York Times study, there was more than 1,000 deaths of the cremation ground. This is 24 times more than the deaths. But there is no death audit. There is no death analysis. So what we are going to suppress? This time, the whole strategy of the government, identification, isolation, testing and treatment has failed. It's collapsed. People have lost faith on the public system. The private sector is open. Last year, government was controlling ki sabko muft ilaj milege in Madhya Pradesh, another thing. This year, you are telling open. People are paying 2 lakhs and 3 lakh and 4 lakhs. I got 50 to 100 calls every day. Sir, Amulya ji, ek bed dila dijiye. Amulya ji, oxygen dila dijiye across the country. And despite all things, we are doing like the public sector. If you see the whole government hospital is captured by few politicians. Bina jugaar ke, bina pairbi ke, bina political leaders, you are not going to get a bed. 12 hours to 30 hours, and death is happening like it's a common. It's very shameful to see today newspaper what Nitish Kumar is telling. सरकार उठाएगी कोविड मरीजों के अंतिम संस्कार का खर्च. What is the role of government? आपको लोगों के अंतिम संस्कार का खर्च उठाना है या लोगों के इलाज का खर्च उठाना है?
You know, I want to just add, you know, this attitude that you're talking about, it builds towards the same, because you don't take life seriously in this country. You don't take healthcare infrastructure seriously in this country. A Madhya Pradesh minister turned around and said, I agree that these deaths are happening. Nobody can stop these deaths. Not only me, everybody in the country is asking about cooperation for protection from coronavirus. But people are dying every day. People get old and they have to die. What can you do? You saw the Haryana Chief Minister, who was questioned about it, to say, don't get into the statistics. आपके चिल्लाने से जो मर गए हैं वो वापस नहीं आने वाले. इन आंकड़ों को देख के क्या? इन आंकड़ों को देख के आप अगली बार ये याद रखेंगे कि अस्पताल बनाना जरूरी है, ऑक्सीजन प्लांट बनाना जरूरी है, ऑपरेशनल वेंटिलेटर्स और उनके लिए ट्रेन्ड पर्सनल रखना अस्पतालों में जरूरी है. सिर्फ मुंबई दिल्ली की बात नहीं, लखनऊ, कानपुर, आगरा, शाहजहांपुर, भोपाल, अहमदाबाद, सूरत, राजकोट, पुणे, नासिक, बीड, the smallest of the towns and the villages across the country. I mean, the state of Bihar has literally gone on for a year with 5 COVID dedicated hospitals for the entire state, and they had elections. That's the level of, apathy that the states have towards people. Anand, we know this time that the infection is spreading faster. More people are getting infected. We've gone on to the extent of saying even in your own homes you wear a mask, you double mask if you need to. In such a case, when the infection spreads faster, what's the time band that you have to react from when a person goes from medium symptoms to serious and then gone?
So the time frame is not too long, but I think what is more important, Tanvi, is that once you start having worrisome symptoms, that will you have access to care? Because if you had access to care, if you had an ambulance which would come, which had oxygen supply, which could stabilize you, which could take you to a hospital where you would be provided emergency care, and if required, you would then be transferred to a COVID care center where stable care could be provided. If you needed ventilator or ICU beds, you would get it. But if you don't have any of that, if you are waiting for 12 hours just to get an ambulance, if oxygen is not something that you can get easily, if once you reach the hospital also there is a long lineup and you have to just lie on a gurney and maybe share something if you are lucky, and then you are just gasping for breath, forget even seeing a doctor, when the doctor or the nurses are busy with the 100 who came before you. That is the problem. It is not the nature of the variant, but it is the nature of the failure of the health system to be able to cope with an increase in the number of cases. And I think that is what we need to focus on. Certainly, viruses will evolve. Variants will be there. They can be more infectious. They could also be infecting younger people at a higher rate than last year, etc. And of course, all of those are important things. We need to do genomic surveillance to understand lots of things. But fundamentally, this is an issue around health system deficiencies, and that is what is being reflected in the way care is not. You go to rural India, but not now even urban India. But this is also the reality for a lot of individuals from lower socioeconomic strata. This is, they are not new to going to a hospital and being told, sorry, we don't have a bed for you, or we don't have a ventilator for you. Now, as it hits middle class India and upper class India, I think people are starting to realize why everyone who are considered activists in this country were clamoring for more investment in public health, in our health systems. Because at times of the pandemic, it doesn't really matter whether you have crores in your bank balance. If there is no bed available, there is no oxygen available, it's going to bite you as hard as someone who has no financial resources.
That's a realization everybody is at. Like, we are all trying, we are, as much as people, one can help, but even the most well-connected and well-established people are unable to do this. That's what has happened in COVID. I wanted to ask this question to Rima as well. Rima, in your research and analysis in the past 1 year, is there any reflection of what kind of healthcare infrastructure did we add? And I'm right now not talking about the temporary quarantine facilities or the jumbo facilities that came up in the first month, but actual concrete life-saving equipment that we would have needed. Did any state really take serious steps to do that even after the first peak?
And obviously, from the kind of reports that we are seeing, that you had floated tenders for oxygen plants, but you never built them. You placed orders for expansion of ICU and getting the material, but you didn't do it. So all that goes to show that we really didn't take this so seriously as we should have. You didn't really expand your infrastructure the way you should have done. And instead now, when the things have become really bad, The government has the cheek to turn around and tell people that, you are creating the problem by hoarding oxygen. You are creating the problem because there's misuse of oxygen. This is a classic response of a lot of governments that, instead of taking responsibility for how they have messed up the situation, they are trying to put the blame on the people by saying that people are not being careful enough. People have not, people are adding to the problem by the fact that, they are hoarding oxygen. Why do people hoard oxygen? People wouldn't need to go out and buy oxygen. People wouldn't need to be standing in queue to buy their own oxygen if they had faith in the system that when they reach the hospital, they will get oxygen. That is a basic that we cannot even guarantee a single person in Delhi today. Today, there isn't a single ICU bed available. There are hardly any oxygen beds available. So people are forced to sit at home even when they know that, they actually need to be in a hospital. There is no option. We are 100% full. Every single bed is occupied. And we are adding about 25, 26,000 new cases every day to Delhi. And these are the cases which we have counted. If we say that 1% of these cases will need ICU care, that's 260 patients that you're adding who need ICU care. Where do you want them to go? If there are 0 ICU beds available right now in the city and you have 260 people who need ICU care, what do you want them to do? Who will take responsibility for them? That will be 260 deaths on the head of the government. The government has to take responsibility for the fact that, you find a way to, reach care to these people. You can't turn around and tell people that, this is your fault, you should have been careful, or that, you're mismanaging things. People wouldn't have to do this. People are being forced to do what they're doing. Nobody wants to do what they're doing. They don't want to be standing in queue. They don't want their loved ones to be, standing for hours outside the hospital and dying at the door of the hospital and not being able to get care. I mean, this is happening in the capital of the country. We are talking about rural India. We can't even provide basic care in the capital of the country, which has so many tertiary care centers. So many centers. I mean, we have the Premier Institute, AIMS here. We have large 1,000, 2,000 bedded hospitals here. We still can't provide care to people in the capital. What are we talking about rural India?
No, you're absolutely right. In the national capital today, it is next to impossible to directly on time get the critical care, the oxygen bed or the ICU bed that you need. Every day we are flooded with messages with desperate people. There are reports that are coming in of those who are waiting, and by the time they finally get a bed allotted, even before they get to the bed, those lives have been lost. That's, and a minute, every single minute here, Dr. Girdhar Babu, counts. When a patient is serious and it takes us 10 hours, 12 hours to find one ICU bed that gets allotted officially. By the time the patient reaches and help is provided, countless cases of how it's been too late. So how do we fix this gap now? Or do we simply lock ourselves up and pray that we're able to save some lives?
Tanvi, this is a real difficult question which has to be answered by the governments over the past several decades. As well put by both Rema and Anant, we do not have fit for purpose public health system. Year by year, we are increasing the expenditure on reimbursements to private health facilities where the treatment is given, and we have a national health authority created just to reimburse the expenses of curative illness in the private sector. What prevented the governments from stepping up the critical care in every district hospital, in every taluk hospital? Why have we imposed this restriction on expanding the capacity of the public health system? This has been done over several decades by all the governments. Every government is responsible for it. Even now, I'll just give you an example. In the United States, 17% of the GDP is spent on health, and most of it goes to drugs, insurance, and pharmas. We are aping that model by ensuring that insurance mechanism is expanded to all the curative illness, while people are allowed to have illness for a very long time. We need to overhaul, change in the entire public health system, the way we take care of health of the people. We need to be looking at prevention of diseases, health promotion. Only then the critical care capacity can be catered to. And let us be very realistic in this. Overnight, we can't increase the number of ICU beds and people who help in these ICU settings. Right now, what we are doing is firefighting. And after this pandemic is over, most of the people will forget this. And then when the next pandemic comes, each year with infectious diseases, many people die. With the same problem occurs with every disease which requires critical care. And we are not worried about it. Now we are worried because all of this is available for us to see within a day. Why we need a stronger public health system is because we need people to be healthy, the society to be healthy and have productivity in the longer run. We aren't doing that. We are only looking at curative illness, especially from the private sector where we need to reimburse for the care there. Why have we sort of outsourced curative illness care to private sector? Why can't we have similar in the government sector? There are good models within the public health system, whether it is AIMS, whether it is Jayadeva Institute of Cardiology. Why can't such tertiary centers be built in every taluk, every block, every district? This is the time for introspection. But for the pandemic management, we need to be stepping up oxygen supply, redistribution, ensure that we prevent as many deaths as possible. And we have a chance to prevent these deaths in the third wave, where by expanding the vaccination, we need to focus on this.
You know, and I want to emphasize on this, Dr. Babu, because we spoke about it in the first wave, saying there will be another round, there will be a second wave. The whole entire world has gone through this cycle. We, for some reason, and our policy makers and decision makers, Mr. Sudhish Mishra, forgot about it. हम भूल गए पहली वेव के बाद, या हमको पड़ी नहीं थी कि एक और राउंड आएगा. फिर हम स्टेट के इलेक्शंस में बंगाल से केरला तक हमारे मुख्यमंत्री जा रहे हैं कैंपेन करने के लिए. हम उन चीज़ों में बिजी हो गए. और अप्रैल तक, जब तक सिचुएशन इतनी खराब नहीं हो गई कि फिर हम उठ के बोले कि ऑक्सीजन कहाँ से आएगा, किसी ने ध्यान नहीं दिया पिछले 6 महीने.
ये मतलब बहुत आश्चर्य की बात है, क्योंकि ये बात सबको मालूम थी. सारे दुनिया भर के जितने भी विशेषज्ञ हैं वो ये कह रहे थे कि भारत में सुनामी आएगी. तो क्यों नहीं तैयारी थी? अब आज का हाल मैं आपको बताऊं. अभी लखीमपुर के एक विधायक का लेटर मैंने देखा, अभी व्हाट्सएप किया किसी ने, कि वो इस लखीमपुर एक छोटा जिला है उत्तर प्रदेश का, और पंचायत चुनावों की वजह से गांव-गांव तक कोविड का फैल गया है. काफी मृत्यु भी हो रही है, लेकिन वहां कोई जांच नहीं हो रही है, वहां कोई पड़ताल नहीं है. वो आंकड़ों में लोग नहीं आ पा रहे हैं. अभी लखीमपुर के विधायक ने, जो कि भारतीय जनता पार्टी के ही विधायक, उन्होंने अपने डीएम को लेटर लिखा है कि मुझे कार्यकर्ता मानकर मेरी बात को सुना जाए कि 100 से ज्यादा लोग मर चुके हैं अब तक. सैकड़ों लोग वहां मर चुके हैं कोविड से, और हमारे 10-20 साथी मेरे पर्सनल कोविड से मर चुके हैं. तो ये स्थिति सिर्फ एक लखीमपुर की नहीं है. उत्तर प्रदेश के जो तमाम जिले हैं, आप सोचिए डेटा कहाँ जा रहा है. मतलब क्योंकि गांव-गांव पहुंच गया है, और गांवों में वो इंतजाम नहीं है. लखनऊ में तब भी आपको लोग दिखते हैं कि ऑक्सीजन के लिए चिल्ला रहे हैं, हॉस्पिटल में बेड नहीं मिल रहे हैं. वहां पे तो ये स्थिति है नहीं. वहां तो जांच ही लोग नहीं करा रहे. ये अलग बात है कि शायद वहां पर उतना ज्यादा घातक असर नहीं है जितना शहरी बस्तियों में है. आज भी मतलब जो डेथ्स हो रही है वो उतनी बड़ी तादाद में नहीं हो रही जितनी शहरों में हो रही है, लेकिन हो रही है. मतलब कभी गोंडा के गांव से खबर आ रही है, कभी गोरखपुर से आ रही है, कभी जौनपुर से आ रही है. और करीब 400-500 टीचर्स जो सरकारी उसमें चुनावों में लगे थे, उनकी डेथ हो गई है. तो बड़ी विचित्र सी स्थिति है. ये चुनाव टलने चाहिए थे. हाई कोर्ट ने इसको पता नहीं क्यों कहा कि ये होने चाहिए, और गवर्नमेंट को इसके खिलाफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट जाना चाहिए था. ये चुनाव इस समय बिल्कुल नहीं होने चाहिए थे, और उसकी वजह से उत्तर प्रदेश में जो संख्या आप देख रहे हैं जो बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ रही है, उसके पीछे कारण ये है कि अब छोटे जिलों में, कस्बों में और गांवों तक में ये पहुंच रहा है. और इसका असर है कि बीजेपी के, भारतीय जनता पार्टी के भी 3 विधायकों की डेथ हो चुकी है. और पार्टी के अंदर यहाँ उत्तर प्रदेश लखनऊ में मोहनलालगंज के सांसद हैं, वो लगातार कौशल किशोर पूरा बखिया उधेड़ रहे हैं जो स्वास्थ्य का सिस्टम है. ब्रजेश पाठक चिट्ठी लिख चुके हैं, जो कैबिनेट मिनिस्टर हैं, और तमाम विधायक लोग भी लिख रहे हैं. तो ये स्थितियां, इसका आकलन नहीं कर पाना, तो फिर ये जो विशेषज्ञ बैठे हैं, आपकी जो टीम 11 है, उसमें लोगों ने क्या किया था, उनकी क्यों तैयारी नहीं थी, ये सोचने का विषय है. और ये जवाबदेही भी होनी चाहिए कि क्यों नहीं किया गया.
ये कह रहे हैं और क्यों नहीं किया, क्योंकि हम भूल गए. और हम अब and it really infuriates me when people turn around, even sometimes experts, and they say, oh, it just hit us by surprise. Nobody was expecting this. Nobody thought it would get this bad. Experts have, top experts have been saying it on our channel through December, January, February. Firstly, Dr. Bhan, that we don't know why the numbers went down in month of January when everything was open, why the numbers were still down, we didn't know. But we did know that there would be another way because it's been everywhere and we still didn't prepare. And today, court after court is questioning the states on why are you hiding the numbers, whether it's the COVID numbers or it's the death numbers, because this is a way of suppressing what their own failure is. I mean, the High Court told the Telangana government that we refuse to believe these death figures being furnished by you, and we want to know what is the number coming in from the crematoriums in Hyderabad and in the states. It is said that there is a disturbing trend of bodies being piling up. We have stories where over 20 bodies were put in one ambulance and taken. We have stories where people have spent the entire day, the entire night at the crematorium because they are having to wait. Lines and piles of bodies simply because we did not hear the warning signs that were there. Anand Bhan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we were fairly lucky that we had a breather. Last summer we had an increase in the number of cases, but then the cases started going down and actually remained down for an extended period of time. It was a good breathing space for us to rebuild the health system, look at what our capacity was, start planning for enough reserves, give a break to our health workers who had already gotten very tired and burnt out at that point of time. But what did we use that break for? We had large congregations, we had political rallies, we had elections announced. We seemed to announce that everything is okay now and you don't need to worry about it. There was poor role modeling, poor usage of masks, etc. And those were all factors probably which have contributed to the kind of rise that we are seeing. I mean, such an acute rise cannot just be because the virus or a mutation or a variant. It is because of a whole lot of these factors which enabled the spread of the virus, which enabled it to reach parts of India where the health system is even poorer than what we see in cities, and just poor mismanagement of the period where we could have spent a lot of time actually planning for the possibility of a wave which could come. As you are rightly saying, there were experiences from other countries. So clearly there's been policy failure, and I want to reinforce what Giri said. I think the easy thought at this point of time, though it's extremely important to respond to the emergency we are seeing in terms of stabilizing the health system, having more oxygen, having more beds, having more care available, is to not remember the lesson from last year, which is now being reinforced, that we need to reinvest in primary public health care, which means that we should have a functional public health system, right from PHCs to community health centers to district hospital to tertiary care, so that you are able to manage many of these cases early enough at the local level and don't need to rely on tertiary care. There are not just patients in Delhi from Delhi, there are patients coming in from surrounding Delhi because there is hardly any care available in rural areas. So anyone who is critical is probably being ferried to state capitals, to district heads, because they're not able to be managed at the local level. And there are lessons from many of our neighboring countries in how to run PHCs and CHCs well, and also use them effectively for vaccination purposes. So if we rebuild our health system in a way that we have functional facilities at the local level, you can stabilize individuals, you can provide good quality care, and more importantly, you can prevent infections, you can prevent long-term chronic disease and its manifestations. So I think that is, again, something we need to keep talking about, that let's not use this as another reason to just invest in tertiary care by building more ICUs, beds and ventilators. That might be required for the short term, but what is good, sound investment is really rebuilding our health system from the bottom up, and the bottom is actually primary healthcare.
Yes, primary health care, of course, in the long term. In the short term, what do we do? That's the other point, and I cannot emphasize on this enough. In this month, if you put together only the official death count, it's over 41,000 lives that we've lost in our country just in the month of April, only the official data that the states are reporting. So much more that is going unreported, which is now cannot be denied. That is the fact. Are we really ready to see these kind of fatality numbers? And when will we wake up to this reality and accept it? And then start changing things. Mr. Amulya Nidhi, ye to official figure hai. I don't even know if anybody has been able to do even a rough math to say what could be the real figure of what we've lost to COVID.
See, if you see the deaths, in the month of February, the official figure was 2764. March, almost it was double. And April, you told that more than 41,000. And if you see this one study of New York Times, it's 25 times more. If you see the districts data, for example, in Madhya Pradesh, there are deaths due to lack of oxygen in Sadol, Anuppur and all that. The government, there is no data in the what's happening at the district level. So this is, the intention here is not this. The intention is very clear with the government that they don't want to rebuild the public health system. Where is Ayushman Bharat? Where is all these schemes? So this, the whole issue, this is planned. The data has been suppressed. The data has been manipulated and the data has been centralized. There is no single press briefing by the government of India on death data. There is no single investigation because government just keep that people are dying. Government is not sensitive. Government is not thinking about each and every death. There is no meeting in the districts and there is no meeting, there is no press briefing, there is no official data how many deaths is happening. Why there is no data about district-wise data in the country, how many deaths happens today? There is no data. Do you have any data? And there are lots of reports in the district. They would try to suppress this data and somebody reveal the data, they threaten them in the districts. So the whole intention was very clear. There, what we want, what Jan Swasthya Abhiyan and all the civil society, all Anant and everybody is sitting here, what we want public health system is strengthened. We want universal health care.
Yes.
But what government want? They want to privatize the whole health system. In the month of February last year, Niti Aayog want to hand over all the district hospitals. They don't want this. They want to hand over everything to the private corporates. So their intention is not to build the public health system. Because why not? Where is the Ayushman Bharat? So nothing. So their intention is very clear. They don't want manpower. They don't want infrastructure. They don't want supply system. They just want. Why not? They are not recruiting the manpower. For example, if you see what we are arguing, Delhi and every places, oxygen and ventilator. I am getting into the hospital as a COVID patient. Where is the doctor? I'm not getting the injections. I'm not getting the ambulances at time play. 12 to 15 hours average waiting list time in the hospitals. There are boards. We don't have beds. What we will do? And if you put oxygen cylinder at our home and if deaths will happen, it will be not reported. And then collector will come and take your oxygen cylinder because they are telling you are doing illegal. So this is the whole centralized system. Either you put it open or you put it in the centralized system, then you put, why not the officers of the government, there are deaths is happening, manipulation, those who have manipulated this data, they should resign.
But why will they, Mr. Amulya Nidhi? It suits the narrative of everybody. It suits the UP government to not acknowledge how bad things are so they can continue campaigning in other states and holding panchayat polls in their own states and then mocking the Kerala model. It suits the Telangana government, which has now been pulled up very badly by the High Court because they have gone ahead and held elections, municipal elections, civil body polls in their own state. And no state wants to admit just how bad the situation is. It suits Gujarat to come up with the most bizarre excuses, from the furnace in the crematorium melted because it was hot outside, to saying that all these deaths are not due to COVID, to then saying, oh, we don't record this data because they didn't die in our hospitals. They still died of COVID. They still died waiting in queue for treatment. They still died running from one hospital to the other. Countless stories every single day we are getting from across the country about how people ran pillar to post, called helpline after helpline, shared information, begged, pleaded for help. And by the time they were just about to get a hospital, or in most cases didn't even get that, the patient was gone. These are the lives we could have saved. Not only have we let this country and the people down by not building the right kind of health infrastructure over years and in the last 1 year, we have let them down again by denying their deaths, by hiding the reality, by making it sound frivolous to say, तो क्या हुआ? चिल्लाने से या बोलने से लोग वापस नहीं आ जाते. At every point, we are disrespecting lives and the value of human lives in our country. Thank you for joining us.
Presented by
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be. Are you planning the farmers braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area? Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet. Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka. The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu. The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going, where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTA response to Mirror Now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be. Are you planning the farmers braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area? Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet. Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka. The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu. The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going, where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTA response to Mirror Now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be. Are you planning the farmers braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area? Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet. Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka. The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu. The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going, where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTA response to Mirror Now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be. Are you planning the farmers braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area? Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet. Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka. The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu. The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going, where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to me.
Are you planning the farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded areas.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to me.
Are you planning the farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded areas.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome.
Good evening and thanks for staying with us here on the Urban Debate 9 p.m. edition. We now move on to the second story that we've been tracking. And amidst the pandemic, elections were held in 4 states and 1 union territory. Results come out on 2nd of May. Elections finally came to an end today, with the last phase of polls being held in Bengal. Let me tell you what projections show, what pollsters are saying will happen this time around. Let me tell you which of the parties are projected to win and form the government. For whoever it is, their first task is cut out, because we are in the middle of a COVID catastrophe. But as for the C-voter projections, we start with the state of West Bengal. The Times Now C-voter projection says TMC is slotted to get 152 to 164. BJP projected to get 109 to 121. The Congress left ISF combined projected to get 14 to 25. It's not giving others anything at all in terms of seats. Let's look at the vote share as well. Interesting stories that come out of here, and especially this time around for the BJP in West Bengal. TMC is projected to get 42% vote share, 42.1%. BJP 39.2% and 15.4% for Congress left and others. Let's go to the neighboring state of Assam, where Times Now C-voter projections show that NDA could return with 58 to 71, while for UPA they're projecting 53 to 66. We've also looked at other pollsters. Largely, everybody is giving that bit of an edge or a bigger gap and a win to the NDA in the state of Assam. Take a look at the vote share. And this is a bit different when it comes to C-voter, Times Now C-voter, where there is a significant gain for vote share for the UPA. What will be interesting to see if it is from the regions where the anti-CA sentiment was the strongest, and if this gain for the UPA was because of its alliance with AIUDF. But will it be enough to win them the elections? As per these projections, not. Tamil Nadu, the Times Now C-voter projected range for UPA 160 to 172. That's DMK led by Stalin, and then Congress and others 160 to 172. NDA, that's AIADMK, BJP, and the others, 58 to 70. This is the story, reduced to 58 to 70. None or a couple maybe for Kamal Hassan's party MNM, a couple maybe for AMMK. That's the projection for Tamil Nadu. Take a look at the vote share as well. DMK plus Congress plus others projected to get 46.7%, and NDA projected to get 35% vote share. In fact, MNM projected to get pretty much the same as they did in the Lok Sabha elections, where they didn't win any seats. So no gains for Kamal Hassan, even in the assembly polls. That's the projection. Kerala, the big turn and the big interesting talking point, set to create history by bringing back the same party and the same government. LDF, the alliance, set to win 71 to 77. UDF 62 to 68. BJP a couple perhaps. And the vote share, the gap is less, but more seat share projections of even other pollsters are actually telling you that Pinarayi Vijayan is coming back. So here are the key headlines. If you've missed what happened earlier in the evening, let me tell you the key headlines. Polls suggest that Mamata Banerjee may return victorious, set for another term in West Bengal. Similarly, in Assam, it will be the BJP which is set to return. We don't know who the chief minister will be, though. Will it be Sarbananda Sonowal or Himanta Biswa Sarma? And after 2 terms, AIADMK is set to go out, and the sun is projected to rise in Tamil Nadu, with the DMK really coming back with Congress. In Kerala, LDF is set to continue, projected to continue as per the pollsters and various polls that we've looked at. Let's talk about this, and our focus tonight is going to be national. So I say good evening to Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, senior journalist joining me right now. Aman Sinha, spokesperson for BJP and senior advocate with the Supreme Court. Dr. Ami Yagnik, member of the Parliament of Rajya Sabha of the Congress Party. Manojit Mandal of the TMC. Professor Dinesh Varshney, leader of the CPI. First up, of course, I want to go across to our managing editor, Vinay Tiwari, with me in our studios. Vinay, your initial reactions to the numbers, some gains, some losses for few of the parties. But a big task for anybody who comes to power with the catastrophe we are staring.
Yes, I mean, so there are 2 numbers currently. One, of course, is being looked by the political parties very keenly, which is the number of seats they won, which they'll know on May 2nd. But for me, the bigger numbers, of course, is the COVID numbers, because that's really the biggest war that we are on currently. And I think for any government that's going to get formed after May 2nd, that will be the big challenge. And in the situation that a government actually changes in a state, it'll just make that challenge even more, because any government who is, going to take oath has to hit the ground running. Bengal is already in a bit of a crisis in terms of the rising number of cases. Tamil Nadu's infrastructure may be better, Kerala is better, but still the situation is no better. But politically, of course, I think these elections will create a new kind of paradigm in many states which are going to elections. In Bengal, you're set for a very fractured, bitter and a very, I would say politically violent phase in the state, with a very close contest. Whichever party comes to power, it's not going to be easy. And that's my concern there is that it's going to create a little bit of a hurdle in governance. You really cannot expect governance to happen when parties are busy trying to save their governments or battling each other out on the streets politically. In Kerala, of course, you will definitely, inevitably have a question of Mr. Rahul Gandhi and the Congress's drift, so to speak, because this will be another instance where he's not been able to save his own citadel. And in that sense, a history is getting created in the state where a government is getting returned to power for a second time, which has never really happened in the last 40 years or so. Tamil Nadu again, I mean, you can pretty much be certain that AIADMK's succession war will now restart, and Sasikala, who's been waiting in the wings, perhaps with this kind of a result in mind, will re-emerge, and you will have another crisis there as well. I think what most polls are suggesting is there's going to be a stable government in Tamil Nadu, because most of them are almost clear that the UPA is winning by quite a handsome margin, that state. So Assam again, many would have argued it's a closer contest. The exit polls don't suggest that. Actually, most of them are of the view it's a clear verdict. And that again will put question marks over some policies that the Congress has adopted in terms of their electoral strategy. So a lot to ponder for the parties, but I hope that in all this political thinking and strategizing, the 5 states which will have new governments very soon do not forget the principal challenge on hand, and that is the COVID war.
Yes, and actually, I also hope that, irrespective of what the polls are suggesting right now, we have very, very clear results, because we absolutely have no bandwidth for more politicking, for more poaching, horse trading, hiding, going to resorts, and all of that drama to go on. So, whatever it is, the mandate, I hope, is clear, because right now saving lives is the most important thing. Let's start off with what you are looking at as far as Bengal is concerned. And Mr. Aman Sinha, quick response from the BJP. Despite all the heavy-duty machinery that was used and deployed in Bengal, the numbers don't seem to suggest that you are in the clear.
Well, Tanvi, these are exit polls. Let us await the final poll results on 2nd of May. And Bengal is not a very easy state for pollsters to call. You've seen even in the past Lok Sabha elections, nobody said that BJP will get 18 seats, but BJP indeed ended up getting 18 and more seats, in fact, thereafter. So let us await the final results. Obviously, we are still very confident that we'll be in a position to form the government in West Bengal. But you also have to be mindful of the fact that BJP was only having 3 MLAs in the past house, and it will be a quantum jump. Today we are in a position to form the government. We have been the principal challenger to the incumbent government, which has been there for many years. So therefore, it's a remarkable progress for party in all respects. And I'm sure when the final results come out, you will find that BJP will get a comfortable majority in state of West Bengal. And as far as other exit poll results are concerned, from whatever I can see, the Times Now see voter poll results, I think Assam you are giving it to BJP. Puducherry, I do not know. Most of the channels have given it to the BJP.
Yes.
And
that is correct.
Right. And it seems in Tamil Nadu, it's DMK has the upper hand, and similarly, as I mentioned in Assam and BJP.
So let me ask you this question, and Mr. Aman Sinha, you are a lawyer, so you are very good with words. So I'm going to try and attempt this one more time. What are you saying? Do you believe these numbers are correct, or that do you believe you will win in Bengal? Or are you saying that these numbers, also show a significant gain for the BJP, and you will now be happy playing that strong opposition in West Bengal?
So Tanvi, as I mentioned to you, these numbers are an assessment, an estimation, and I'm sure people have worked hard for this. I do not, bring out any infirmities or discrepancies in the numbers. The point that I'm making is that final results indeed will be known on 2nd of May. And based on our own inputs and reports that we are having, we are very confident that in state of West Bengal, we'll be able to form the government with a clear, comfortable majority. But at the same time, I was saying that the progress that BJP has made in past 5 years is truly commendable and notable. And, coming from 3 seats to being in a position to form the government is no small achievement in itself.
Okay, let me get in a quick reaction then from Manojit Mandal, because Manojit Mandal, various polls suggest obviously difference in numbers. Yes. There are others who are actually giving the lead to the BJP, so you can't heave a sigh of relief yet. The Times Now See Voter puts the TMC ahead, but Republic CNS puts the BJP ahead, and then there are others who are still yet to put out their numbers, so we'll get those consolidated figures in. But your own estimates, does this look like a number you are happy with?
First of all, we are, as we have been consistently talking about, that we are quietly confident about our majority, and it would be a thumping majority. There won't be there is no question of any fractured mandate. That did not happen in Bengal for the last 50 years or so. So that's not going to happen. I want to understand the kind of mind games that BJP were playing. Even 5-7 days back, when the Home Minister was here on the 22nd of this month, you were saying that we have already got the majority and ab ki baar 200 par. What happened to that kind of mind games? I want to understand that. I mean, none of the sort of pollsters, including the one largely sponsored by them, Man Ki Baat. So I should be saying Jan Ki Baat, but Jan Ki Baat, who's Man Ki Baat, we all know. I mean, I'll puncture this kind of pollster saying that in 2 districts, Malda and Murshidabad, there are 34 seats. Out of 34, Congress is going to get at least 10. I tell you, at least 10. I'm talking about Congress party. And this Man Ki Baat or Jan Ki Baat, they are giving Congress only 3 to 9 seats all over Bengal. So that's the kind of credibility that these people are actually holding. So apart from that Jan Ki Baat poll, nobody is giving any clear majority to BJP. All of them are pointing towards the TMC's majority. So I want to understand the kind of mind games that all the ministers, around 50 ministers, including the Home Minister, the Prime Minister, 4-5 chief ministers, what they were talking about. I mean, they could not beat one single lady, Mamata Banerjee. We did not bring in our friends from outside. I mean, we could have.
Okay.
I mean, we have plenty of friends from other political parties, but we did not have to. We have one star in Mamata Banerjee, and they have plenty of stars, 50 of them. And look at the number of cabinet ministers which came to sort of campaign here, and they are barely getting 100. Barely. I would still sort of hold it back, saying that they will struggle to cross 3-digit marks. That is our position.
Yes. Okay. Let him respond. Mr. Aman Sinha is very anxious to respond to you. And then I have to go to our other panelists as well. I have 3 more panelists, please. Quick response, Aman Sinha.
Tanvi, I'm amazed at the arrogance of the TMC spokesperson. He seems to be, believing that these are final results. No, please, acknowledge the reality. These are estimation. These are exit poll results. Please await the final results. How do you know what final results are going to be?
I did not say that.
And based on that, you are passing out sweeping blanket judgments against BJP. Don't worry, there is a possibility that BJP may get more than 200 seats. And we do not need your certificate. Let us await the final.
Okay. So now this is a fight about whether to believe the projections or not, and which one to believe, whether you want to believe this one or that one. No. May I please go across to our other panelists as well and get quick responses from them. And I want to go across, before I go to Congress party, I want to get a response from the left as well. Mr. Dinesh Vashne, you're better off fighting the Congress than you are when you join hands with them. Would you agree?
Will you please repeat your question, Tanvi?
I was saying you're better off fighting the Congress party than you are when you join hands with them to fight elections.
We are fighting against the fascist forces in the entire country, including these 5 states. And every state has its own specificities in India. India is a country of unity and diversity. It has many differences, it has many unities. But let me tell you, Tanvi, before coming to your debate, I'm very sad that there is an institutional collapse while dealing with the corona by the central government and by the Modi ji, and the entire government was sitting in Bengal when corona was spreading. Now oxygen shortage, bed oxygen there, and sole responsibility goes to the Modi. As far as these 5 state elections are concerned, BJP is not going to form government anywhere except one in Puducherry, that too from the coup from the Lieutenant Governor House. That can, otherwise they are not going to form government anywhere until and unless they have done the selective manipulation of the EVMs. Second thing, in Kerala we are going to form government, over 100 seats we will win, and we are going to increase our tally. Bengal also, the left-hand Congress will increase its tally. We don't agree to the assessment of these various things. All these election results, these predictions went wrong in the Bihar also. You were showing Bihar left 0, 0, 0, and the last happened, what happened? Same thing will happen in Bengal, in Tamil Nadu, Congress, in Kerala, the BJP has only 1 seat, they will lose. They will lose. That will
but surely, Professor Vashne, surely you don't want to argue with me on the minutiae details of when you will be reduced as the third front, the third party in the state. From one that ruled for years together to now a third party whose numbers may not really impact who forms the government.
This time this is not going to happen. Don't worry. Let the second May come. We will have much better seats than BJP. Don't worry.
Okay, let me get a quick response in from the Congress party as well. Same question to you. Ami Yagnik, whoever joins hands with the Congress party seems to see grave losses in their political fortunes.
Tanvi, first of all, let me tell you that I was very happy when Mirror was totally showing the situation in the country and you were with the people of this country. You have been great in showing the reality and talking about vaccines and the difficulties faced by people. But today when I had to come for an exit poll, I feel very sad that at such a time when people are crying, people are dying, people want medicine, people want beds, people want oxygen, people want hospitals, we are talking about exit polls. And that also because this is kind of an assessment. You will be conducting the same exercise for the next 3 days till the results are out on May 2nd. And
so
after
Dr.
that,
Yagnik, allow me 30 seconds. Allow me 30 seconds. I don't want to get into a war of words with you. I'm not going to sit here and question the push-ups and pull-ups that Rahul Gandhi was doing with college kids when people were dying. But I just want to tell you, in case you missed it because you were on another channel doing an exit poll debate, my first prime time conversation, even this evening, Dr. Yagnik, was on COVID, the COVID catastrophe. I did an exhaustive 6 p.m. and an exhaustive 8 p.m. because I and Vinay and our entire channel believes that is still the biggest story that we have to track. So spare me this answer that may work on other channels, but it doesn't work here because we are continuing with that work.
This is the first channel that I'm talking about exit polls. I was not on any other channel. And I'm praising your work because I am seeing that day in and day out that you are bringing the issues to the forefront.
Including
but now
today.
that I'm coming for an exit poll, I feel sad. So can I not voice my expression that yes, at a time like this, when people are wanting to hear about what help they can get, we are talking about an assessment. You are going to discuss it after the result. But anyway, coming to your point, well, when they have said, one of the speakers said that from November onwards till date, now today the voting has been over and there has been continuous rallies and all the cabinet ministers were busy with elections. Nobody had time for corona. To talk about this assessment is absolutely premature right now. It should be feel pain. Everyone should feel pain that we are not able to help the people because elections are meant for governance, not to snatch power, not to bring politics. We have to be with the people of the country. The power is to be given to work for the people of this country. And if the Prime Minister has to go for rallies and become a kind of a super spreader with these rallies, I think we have to ask ourselves that whether we are talking about elections, we are talking about powers. Please don't interrupt, Mr. Aman.
Look at the Congress hypocrisy. So why should I not interrupt? How can you use the tone and tenor? No, you have been.
No, 1 minute, please. Aman Sinha, allow others to finish. I gave you the first opportunity and I gave you ample time to make your comments, Aman Sinha. Please don't interrupt others. You will get your time to rebut and then you can say what you want. Can I just please hear Dr. Ami Yagnik? Yes.
The rallies with lakhs of people have become super spreaders. The people have gone back to their respective states or wherever, and you can see what has happened. The death toll has crossed 3.5 lakhs. So my point is only that when let the final results come on May 2nd, continuously discussing on exit polls or opinions on these polls, we should concentrate more that let the pain of the people be relieved. Let us talk about how best we can help the people of this country and why we should not be asking the questions to the present ruling dispensation at the center. Then why are the ministers sent for elections? They should be preparing for the second wave of the corona. The world is looking at us. The world is watching that, yes, this country is facing such a harsh wave of corona and people are running here and there for elections. So that is my point. Let us not talk about individual parties. Let us see what is this power, political power for. Let us believe in democracy and let us believe in social justice.
Well, everybody was running around. Everybody held rallies. Everybody broke norms. Everybody is still doing it in the state of Telangana. Telangana, in the state of Karnataka, and in the state of Uttar Pradesh, where local polls are being held. I really don't think any political party should try and make a higher than other kind of take a higher moral ground on this front. Cancelling rallies post 20th of April didn't make sense for anybody, because by then the damage was badly done. Nobody took a tough stand when they had to say, let's stop it now, including the Election Commission. Aman Sen, I will come to you, but I want to go across to Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay as well. And Mr. Mukhopadhyay, as I come to you, one of the other polls that we were closely tracking have finally come out with their Bengal numbers, and I'm looking at the India Today Axis numbers. And it's very interesting, because while Times Now CE Voter gives the lead to the TMC, Axis India is projecting 130 to 156 for TMC and 134 to 160 for the BJP. They have literally put both in similar range, and it's a very big range, 130 to 156 for TMC, 134 and 160 for the BJP. So right now, I am simply putting out the picture here, Vinay, that we're looking at different pollsters giving different picture for West Bengal, some putting TMC in the lead, others putting BJP in the lead, and this one putting both in the same range. Mr. Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, what do you make of this?
No, I think, as far as Axis India Today poll on West Bengal is concerned, I think it's basically, try to understand it statistically. They possibly in their poll found the vote share of the two of them to be almost at par. Now they always, every time in a survey or in a poll, the biggest challenge is how do you convert vote share into seats. Now because they are almost at par, that is why they are trying to increase the band in which the seats are going to actually be there and bringing the two of them fairly close to each other. If this actually happens, we really do not know that how close are they going to be to each other. Are they going to be 140, 150 or something, it could even be 130 and 180. We really do not know that what is going to be the band. But it definitely shows that the contest, as far as this poll is concerned, that it is a fairly close contest. And if that is the case, then I think, it's very important to go back to what Vinay had said right in the beginning, that we are tracking not just the numbers of the elections, but also of the COVID numbers. But I would say that there is yet another set of numbers which we must keep track of in the context of the results that will come out on the 2nd of May. That is that regardless of what the BJP might want to claim, there definitely would be a certain amount of dissatisfaction among the people at the central government in the way the COVID situation has been handled, not being able to anticipate the almost a catastrophic level of the second wave. Now this is definitely going to erode a certain amount of faith or a support in Mr. Modi personally and the BJP at a national level. To what extent would this get balanced out by the election? A good performance in West Bengal is once again going to infuse a lot of enthusiasm in the BJP cadre to be able to recover the loss faced due to the COVID front. So that is why I think, the elections become very important, because it is going to have a very definite impact on the BJP narrative, how it plays on. Mind you, next February and March will be the crucial elections in West Bengal. UP is not doing well as far as COVID is concerned. It will have an effect on the elections next year also. So a good performance in West Bengal is going to enable the BJP to prepare a good ground to go in on a fairly confident note in Uttar Pradesh. The second thing, which we have been talking about repeatedly, I keep on saying that we must not forget, that elections are also very important. The question is not to question. I found a ring of questioning elections in the way Ami Yagnik phrased her, disagreement with exit polls. Exit polls are a very important part of elections, at least for people like us, who track data, who look at political trends. It gives a tremendous amount of insight into politics, and politics is what determines governance. So it is very important that elections continue. The only questions which we need to constantly ask, which we have been doing since the evening, is the way the elections have been conducted, and on this score the Election Commission must be faulted, and we must put pressure on the Election Commission so that future elections are held in the way it should be during a pandemic.
Very well said. Since you made the point about vote share, and perhaps that's where, that's what's prompting Access My India to come up with this kind of a range. We're just getting in those numbers, and it seems that the vote share, they're projecting 44% for TMC and 43% for the BJP. Often it's said that when it comes to opinion polls and exit polls, most of psephologists actually look at vote share as a bigger telling story than seats.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Nilanjan is absolutely right. In pure science of sampling and pure science of, psephology, vote share is a very critical part of it. Of course, it's a statistical skill to convert the vote share into seats. And remember, that's where problems start in states like West Bengal. And in West Bengal, the problem terrain is a little more complex than other terrains, and especially this year. Three complexities why this time I have a feeling that exit polls would not have been able to accurately gauge everything. I'm not saying one way or the other, but I'm generally saying. Number one, if a vote share difference between the two principal parties is 1%, and in some seats there is a third stronger candidate or an opponent which is present, it can seriously impact the outcome of it. It's very difficult to predict that outcome if there is another player available. So, for instance, if there's a CPM candidate or there's a Congress candidate who has some reasonable chance of weaning away some percentage of the vote, you can't predict that so accurately. That is part one. Part two, in Bengal, fear as a factor has always been there in terms of people not giving the right response or holding back on their actual responses. And I suspect this year that would have been a little higher than possibly even before. And the third and the most important thing is, remember, this exit poll, much like the elections, have also been conducted in the middle of a pandemic. And that does impact the quality of the responses that you sometimes get. Because, exit polls, the exit pollsters stand at the polling station and expect the sample to walk to you. In a normal situation, in an 8-round election, a pollster would actually use the right-hand rule and go to people's houses as per a refined sample and then speak to people. There is greater time and there is greater robustness in how you sample it. And I have a feeling that this time that's one side effect of the pandemic which may cast its shadow in closely fought elections. So there is a little bit of a doubt there. But having said that, Ranjan is absolutely right. In a 1% vote share gap, it's a nightmare to try and convert that statistically into seats.
Okay, Aman Sena, you wanted to make a point earlier. Go ahead, please.
So, Tanvi, first of all, I am amazed at the hypocrisy and hollowness of the Congress party. I mean, she has come here and she's castigating the entire electoral process. All her chief ministers have been campaigning, and we know these, state of affairs in Congress-ruled states, and they come out and start using such language and such abusive, words for each and every constitutional functionary. Does it behoove them? And I mean, do they not even understand that people see through their hypocrisy and hollowness? Now, that apart, what is also to be noted that some of the political functionaries, either they are still in the campaign and election mode, they seem to be saying, yes, this is happening, that is happening, or either they have said that, no, this is the final judgment which has come out and there is no need of having the final results. Now, how can that be plausible? We have just seen yet another exit poll has come through. What is evident is that West Bengal is a closely contested election, and certainly the election final results, nobody knows the of ballot box or EVM, and final results can come out any which way. However, what is to be noted is that BJP has made remarkable progress, whether it is West Bengal, whether it is Assam, whether it is Kerala, whether it is Puducherry. In all the states, BJP is going to gain much greater vote share, and in most of the states, I'm sure in West Bengal, in Assam and Puducherry, we are confident of getting a majority on our own.
Well, I hope whoever does at least makes it a point to ensure we now manage to get a handle on this situation that we have allowed to get out of control because we wanted to fight elections and win some power and get as much power as we want. But Ami Agni, would you want to respond to what Aman Sinha is saying before I bring in TMC on this as well?
Yes, Tanvi, I never used abusive language. I never use. I'm continuously hearing from parties at political rallies the level at which the vocabulary has gone down. Let's not get into that. I only said that political rallies became super spreaders, and that should have been taken care of. That is the only thing I said, and the whole world is saying that.
Then why do you
Because
not advise the Chief Minister?
lakhs of people went there, and there were no social distancing norms or mask norms followed. That is one thing. Second thing is, I completely agree with Nilanjan ji about the exit polls. Yes, they are part of democracy. I only said that there has never been a pandemic or a burning situation like this ever in the past. And so this time, for once, if we could have made the exit poll opinion debates a little shorter and not concentrate on that and concentrate more on the burning issues of this country and help the people who are crying for help, because all over Twitter, all over Facebook, there's only requests for oxygen, for beds, for ventilators. So that being the situation, I said that exit polls should not take so much time as it is taking normally all the time. I did not say anything else. I know what is the meaning of election, and I know what is the meaning of politics, and I also know what is the place of government.
So much time in exit polls?
Okay. Allow me to also bring in Manojit Mandalan, and as I go to the TMC, let me also point out, 1 minute, Aman Sinha, another set of projections coming in for West Bengal, where today's Chanakya is projecting 108 for the BJP, plus or minus 11 seats, and 180 for the TMC, plus or minus 11 seats. So now yes, Vinay.
No. I just wanted to add this. Monojit will bear me out. Actually, this number is exactly the internal estimate of the TMC.
Yeah.
This is what they have in their internal estimate.
Okay, so that matches with TMC's estimate, but I want to know from Mr. Mandal, are you going to discredit now Axis poll and say Chanakya is right, Axis is wrong, Jan Ki Baat is useless, and sea voter may be right?
Look at what they have done. They have given, and I'm not talking about our projections. You forget about TMC. I want to understand, in Murshidabad district there are 22 seats. Congress is going to get at least 8 to 10. BJP is nowhere in Murshidabad.
I am very amused.
It's a fight between Congress and TMC. Now this poll, Axis My India, giving Congress only 0 seats. Congress and CPM for 0 seats in the entire stretch of Bengal. Now how does that happen? I want to understand. Because BJP could not even fill their agents in all the booths in Murshidabad district. And so is to a large extent true for Malda. In Malda and Murshidabad, again I am making the same point, out of these 34 seats, I am not again talking about TMC, Congress is going to get at least 10 to 12 seats. They are giving them 0 seats. How does this happen? This really punctures the credit that they are trying to get. They are completely looking at a bipolar contest. And my good friend from CPM will try to understand this, that how are they taking this up? I'm not
so then tell me, do you think Axis My India is getting it, is closer to what the reality is? No, okay, I take your point.
They are giving 0 seats to left.
Okay, you refuse to believe that Congress and left will get 0 seats, but as TMC spokesperson, do tell me, do you think India today, Axis My India is closer to the reality that both of you are neck and neck, BJP and TMC? Allow me to ask my question, Mr. Mandal. Listen to my question.
I understand the credibility of these polls, sir.
Acha.
Yes.
So the credibility of the polls is under question, but then tell me, what is your projection? Let's put in your projection here as well. Let's go with that.
Again, we don't talk about the numbers, but our numbers are quite high. It would be at least 175 plus. Look, I'm not going by the today's Chanakya's poll. Our assessment is amply clear. We are going to get at least 175 plus seats in Bengal. And in this district, again, I'm telling you, according to our assessment, Congress is going to get at least 10 to 15 seats. And that is going to happen from 2 districts only. That is the reality from which these people are completely sort of out. They don't understand the reality in Murshidabad district, where BJP is nowhere. There are 48% minority votes in Murshidabad and Malda. how BJP is going to get seat out of these two districts? I want to understand that.
It's just an aside. It's just an aside. This is the first time I've seen a
Please
spokesperson
make
of a
me
party
understand.
forcefully arguing that another party will get more than what's being projected. I've never seen that before. Usually people overrate their own performance. This first time I'm seeing he's insisting that Congress will get more than what they're being projected.
We take the holes in the pollsters.
So, okay, you are trying to punch the holes in the pollsters' numbers by saying if somebody is projecting this, they're obviously getting it wrong. Okay. May I bring in Mr. Dinesh Varshney also on this? Mr. Varshney, do you agree that this is, I mean, help Manojit Mandal here. He is defending the left and the Congress right now, saying not possible that you get zero.
He doesn't know about Puducherry.
Look. In a very initial state, I said that these projections by the exit poll are not real. We don't agree to this. We are going to definitely have much better seats than BJP in West Bengal now, and you will see the result on 2nd of May. And I do agree with Manojit Mandal on Malda and Murshidabad. Same thing will happen in Darjeeling also, where left will have better share than any other political party. So this is for to understand by these exit poll conductors. These exit polls are nowadays become a tool of the Modi ji and the ruling powers. Unfortunately, reason being they are financed directly or indirectly by them. Directly by them, as they have been financed in the oxygen plant, only one vendor throughout the country. This is the only country where one vendor is given the oxygen plant responsibility, and he has run away, and mismanagement has happened. And last two phases in Bengal election, the BJP is not going to get a single seat because of the COVID spread and the worst failure of the Modi government in saving the life of the people of the country.
Yes, Mr. Raman Sinha.
What is appalling here is that political parties also have their roles and responsibilities. Now, everybody sitting here just conveniently blaming everything upon the central government when it is the central government which is in action. Just imagine that about 650 oxygen plants were sanctioned way back in October 2020, and 80% of the plants were not activated or implemented by the state government. Funds were allocated, and they are sitting here and thus just uttering anything which comes out of your mouth.
When did tender?
October 2020.
There is a procedure for tenders.
In October 2020. I have told you the date. You go and check up. I'm not here to educate you. October 2020, these plants were sanctioned, funds were allocated, and 20% of these plants were set up, many of them by BJP governments. And people here who are jumping up and down and portraying themselves as the great sympathizers and supporters and helping people in this pandemic situation did not erect a single oxygen plant.
Okay.
Despite that funds being allocated.
Right. Okay. Let me hear what Dinesh Varshney has to say about it. Good that the political parties at least want to debate what they did or didn't do as far as the COVID situation is concerned. Let's talk. Yes, Mr. Varshney.
Tanvi, no, I did not compete.
You did.
This is the very first.
You've asked a question. Let Dinesh Varshney respond to that. What happened to the plants that were allocated by the center? Why did only BJP governments put them in place?
Look, Tanvi, let me tell you. They have given the construction of the making of the oxygen plant to a single vendor. This is the only country in the world where the single vendor is given whether he has a capacity or not to build. Number two, when they have raised the tender, for example, the Kerala tender, the tender last date is 30th July because they uploaded the tender in February. There is a procedure for tender. Until and unless the emergency, the tender procedures are waived off. That is being issued by the central government health ministry, not by us, not by any state government. They lied. Their lie has been caught in the Delhi High Court also.
Yes.
I'm not defending Kejriwal. They can't. They're lying to the nation again and again. And if they think, if 100 times they speak the lie becomes truth. It's absolutely nonsense. People are dying. People are suffering for oxygen. People are not getting beds. People are afraid. Psychological fear. They are living in fear. They are not sleeping at a night. Every family has seen one or the other casualty. I lost my elder brother to COVID. To whom are you talking? He was a military personnel. Air Force director is not getting a seat. Chetan, who used to come on our debate, is not getting an admission to the aim, despite the fact he's losing his life. What are you talking?
Well, we all realize it today, Mr. Varshney, but we all realize it today, but we didn't do anything about it post-November. No, please, no, I don't want any more lecturing happening here on this panel by politicians. I'm sorry, I have had it enough, and I have heard enough from the politicians on what you didn't do and you didn't do. Aman Sinha, please spare me the blame game. Please spare me the blame game before I start questioning the BJP on the series of failures. Your BJP governed states, Aman Sinha, are not even admitting to the deaths in their states. Spare me the lectures. You are sending now Air Force planes all over the world to get empty cylinders. What were you doing for the last 1 year? State chief ministers have been campaigning from Kerala to West Bengal. What were they doing for the healthcare infrastructure in their own? No, this is not going to happen. You are not going to talk over me, and you will not lecture us or put blames on other political parties. This is getting ridiculous. Ridiculous this is.
When there is a paucity of oxygen, people will wait for a tender process. What is the point that you are making?
What is the point that you are making? Who issued the tender?
I'm saying that it's a pandemic
situation. You are waking up on 25th of April to call for oxygen from across the world.
Not get agitated. This is not, no,
please spare me the lectures and spare the lectures on this program. For 1.5 months, Miranao has been raising these issues. You were all busy campaigning. You were all busy calling people for your rallies. Let me show you the visuals. In case you've forgotten, because you think you're going to win elections, let me show you the visuals of the rallies. Rally after rally, cabinet minister after cabinet minister, chief minister after chief minister has been busy for the last 6 months only with elections. Spare me the lecture today from any of the political parties. I am not interested in listening.
I cannot understand. Why are you so desperately trying to target BJP? Everybody is conducting rallies. Go and question them. When I talk about pandemic, you come to rallies. When I talk about the exit poll results, you come to some other issue. Please focus on one issue and try to discuss that.
Tell me, what issue do you want to discuss? Let's debate it right now. Tell me, which one do you want to discuss? Rallies or deaths in the cities across our country right now? Tell me which issue you want to discuss. Road shows or people gasping for breath for lack of oxygen? Tell me what you want to discuss right now, Aman Sinha.
And why do you not hold other Congress governments
accountable? You don't need to question me on that. My conscience is clear on who I question and who I don't.
These oxygen plants could not be erected. Why are you not questioning the Congress party spokesperson?
Why are you waking up today and sending planes across the world to get in oxygen? What were you doing for the last 6 weeks?
For 2020.
What were you doing for the last 6 weeks? Why are you starting trains today? Why are you sending planes today? Why are you now saying you will send? Why did you sanction 160 more oxygen plants? What were you doing for the last 6 weeks?
Allocated thousands and thousands crores of rupees and new plants are being erected every day.
Where is the oxygen from these plants? Give me one example.
Please. No, I've told you. Out of the 652 plants which were allocated, 20% have already been erected and they are functional in BJP states. And the kind of exercise which has happened, global effort to secure oxygen generators, to secure other oxygen cryogenic plants, etc. From each and every country, wherever these resources could be augmented.
Wow. Okay, so then we should sit and celebrate here and pat you on your back that after thousands have died in this country, people are running around from national capital to the smallest of the towns in our country right now, begging and pleading for oxygen. You have managed to finally get 5 planes full of empty cylinders from other countries. Congratulations, Mr. Aman Sinha. This really infuriates me. Political party after political party, from Congress party to the BJP, has the audacity to tell us today that why are we talking about exit polls? Why are we talking about what the other states are doing? What have they done for the last 6 months?
Look, let's be very blunt and let's say exactly how it is. There is absolutely no question about it that the entire political class, and for Mr. Aman Sinha's benefit, I must repeat this, entire political class, irrespective of the party, irrespective of the coalition, or irrespective of the color of the flag of that party, has failed the citizen of India. Now, this includes the Maharashtra government, which is not a BJP government. It includes the Gujarat government, which is a BJP government. It includes the Delhi government, which is an Aam Aadmi Party government. And it also includes Uttar Pradesh, which is also a BJP
West
government.
Bengal.
And West Bengal, that's a TMC government. The fact of the matter is, the politicians of this country were so busy chasing power in a hurry that they forgot that this pandemic works very differently. Now, where I disagree with Aman, and I would bear, and please if he can bear us out and hear for 30 seconds, when you have enormous power and you have enormous popularity, also comes enormous responsibility. I gave this example at 6 p.m. Tanvi when we were talking about it. In the first innings, the Prime Minister started the Swachh Bharat campaign. And when he started the Swachh Bharat campaign, he decided to pick up the broom himself. That did make a difference because people said, oh, for the first time, the Prime Minister is doing something himself, which no other Prime Minister has done before. And you saw some impact of that on the ground. What Prime Ministers say, any Prime Minister says, has an impact on what the people ultimately do. And when you have a Prime Minister who's more popular than many other Prime Ministers, what you say makes a difference. So when you have a Prime Minister who goes to international fora and says, we have conquered COVID, people take cue from it. And then in the political rallies or the political road shows, when you have a visual display of ministers or senior leaders not wearing masks and not following the very guidelines that they insist on other people wearing it, and you show a duplicity of standards, it creates a very difficult situation. And that is why there is, and the last and the most important thing, no government, and I am repeating this, no government irrespective of party has prepared for a situation where our medical infrastructure is capable enough of handling a better load. And I'm not saying that every single patient with 5 lakh people in the hospital could have been treated. But surely, and just before this show, Tanvi, when we had experts on the panel, they all said that surely 50% of the lives that have been lost, 40,000 odd people who've lost their lives in April, at least half of them were young people whose lives could have been saved if you had better infrastructure available. I cannot understand. We had an example of a Nandurbar DM who has set up a captive oxygen plant in his district and he saved lives.
Yes.
You have today the Maharashtra government waking up and now suggesting that they will build 8 oxygen plants in every district. Why did the first wave not teach us that? Including state governments. It's not just central government alone, both government, they should have done that. That is one. Two, the central government enjoys clout and authority. The government should have pushed all state governments, just like we did last year, during the COVID, where all party meetings were done, all CMs were repeatedly called and given specific instructions via the ISMR. Why was it not done today? I can list 100 things where we went wrong at the central level. The vaccination policy, production control orders were not issued in January when they should have been. The genome sequencing that should have happened, even money was not allocated till February. So we were late in finding out which variant is currently in place. Now we have a third variant. The United Kingdom probably knows better than we do about what kind of variants are changing. Doctors need this knowledge or information to change and adapt to new vaccines.
Yes.
We have not used a scientific approach.
I don't even know if the West Bengal government is aware of what the triple mutant
West Bengal government, I'm sure, is not aware of it. Yes,
is capable of doing.
I'm very sure.
And nobody is asking these questions. Nobody is asking these questions because everybody was busy for 6 months. So spare us any lectures on what is the state of affairs right now and who did what. Elections are over, you fought, the results will be out soon whether you've won or you've lost. People are dying. And people are dying because you dropped the ball. You lowered your guard. And now they are standing outside hospitals begging for beds and cylinders. I'm going to thank the panelists who joined us on this conversation. But keep this in mind, people. 41,000 lives lost just in the month of April. And we continue asking for votes. Think about it. Thank you for joining us.
Presented by
and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirana tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirana. You first. Information Information that impacts us all is news to be.
Are you planning the farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded areas.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be.
Are you planning the farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded areas.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be.
Are you planning the farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded areas.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district.
In Andhra Pradesh, Srikakulam, a COVID patient lost her life waiting on the road because she couldn't get hospitalized on time. A private hospital allegedly refused to admit the woman without an advance cash payment and were not willing to accept payment by digital means. The patient's family spent 3 hours trying to arrange for cash. But in the meantime, unfortunately, the woman passed away.
9 గంటలకు ఏ హాస్పిటల్ తీసుకొచ్చాను అంటే మేము హెల్త్ ఎంప్లాయీని మా దగ్గర ఆర్టీసీ తీసుకొని చేయించాను పాజిటివ్ వచ్చిందని నేను జాయిన్ చేయడం తీసుకొచ్చాను క్యాష్ అవుతుంది అన్నారు సరే ఆరోగ్యశ్రీ లేదు ఆవిడకి క్యాష్ అవుతుందంటే సరే అన్నాను కానీ లిక్విడ్ క్యాషే కావాలంటున్నారు ఇప్పుడు ఇది ఫోన్పే కానీ కార్డు కానీ అలో చేయరంట లిక్విడ్ క్యాష్ ఏటీఎం వెళ్ళి వచ్చేప్పటికి ఊపిరాడు చనిపోయారు ఆవిడ.
Completely out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. Information that impacts us all is news to be.
Are you planning the farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded areas.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirror now tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
I am Shrija MS reporting for Mirror Now. You first. information that impacts us all is news to me.
Are you planning to farmers?
Braving through the harshest winters and reporting from the flooded area.
Where I'm standing is at least about 3.5 to 4 feet.
Reporting from the remotest of areas across Karnataka.
The rape of a minor girl took place in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu.
The insatiable desire to report news is what keeps me going. Where reporters and video journalists are less welcome and investigating the real stories where governments don't want told.
A poll promise of 46,000 crore rupees, but this RTI response to Mirana tells that they have so far dispersed only 1,150 crore rupees.
Good evening to the 8 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Tonight we continue with our relentless focus on the COVID catastrophe, because it is a catastrophe. Tonight we talk about what is the true picture when it comes to COVID fatalities, lives being lost to this coronavirus, while the state governments, one after the other, face the heat of our courts and public alike over total COVID mismanagement. Here is another concerning trend. More and more cities, more and more states are allegedly misreporting on COVID-related deaths. In the past 2 weeks, reports of data mismatch has actually emerged from 5 states, including Gujarat, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and now we look at Delhi and Karnataka. Let me tell you what's happening in Delhi. And by the way, in the national capital, this mismatch, this fight between the MCD run by the BJP and the state numbers took place even in the first wave. After much outrage and debate, there was some amount of data correction that did take place there to give us a correct picture. Right now, it's the civic body again in the national capital that is taking on the AAP government over data mismatch. The MCD claims 1,500 deaths are missing from the Delhi government's record. I don't understand, viewers, why any government, any city authority thinks they can get away. They may try to block information, but I don't understand how they believe this kind of truth will remain hidden. For example, in Karnataka, there is a discrepancy of 760 deaths within the Bengaluru civic body's own records. Between different departments, BPMP records of different data shows a discrepancy. The civic body is giving us one number, the crematorium is giving us another number, and the discrepancy is over 700 deaths. In Patna, there is a mismatch between the data that the state government gives us and what the crematoriums are telling us. The government says 23 people have died in Patna on 23rd April. Crematorium